Hi, I'm the Midnight Storyteller, here to keep you company through the quiet hours. Many of you listen to these stories to fall asleep, and I'm honored to guide you there. And before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps keep the stories alive. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it on your side of the night? Now, get comfortable, relax, and let's begin. Claire Mendez was halfway through her morning rounds at El Paso General when her cell buzzed. Unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. "Miss Mendez?" a nurse said, voice tight with hesitation. "Your mother has been admitted." Claire froze. "I think you've got the wrong Claire Mendez. My mother died in 2001. The nurse paused. "She says otherwise." The woman had been found in the desert outskirts near Van Horn, hands bloody from clawing at a child's grave. She claimed her daughter had been buried alive. Claire's drive to the facility was spent gripping the wheel hard enough to ache. The desert blurred past, familiar yet wrong, like someone had painted her memory over with a slightly different hue. The patient waited in a small, sunless room. Her hair was grayer, her frame thinner, but the face was unmistakable. "Mom," Claire whispered. The woman blinked. "No, I'm not your mother. You're not my daughter." Claire stared. The resemblance was exact. Her voice, the warmth and cadence, ached in Claire's chest like a phantom limb. "You're confused," Claire said. "There was a fire. When I was 11, The woman shook her head slowly. "You were adopted after the fire. My Claire didn't make it out. They buried her. But they were wrong." Claire opened her mouth, but no sound came. "Claire was buried alive," the woman said, "and she's still screaming." Claire returned to El Paso and pulled her birth certificate from her files. Her middle name was spelled Annalise. She remembered it as Annalise. A typo, she told herself. Old family photos felt distant. In one, her face was hidden behind glare. In another, her smile was off-center, like her presence had been added in after the fact. At work, she asked her colleague, Jason, how long they'd worked together. He frowned. "Didn't we hire you just last year?" "I've been here since 2018. Jason looked unconvinced. Her apartment lease had no start date. Her diplomas were unsigned. Every anchor she checked was a thread in a dissolving web. She drove back to the facility. The woman was humming a lullaby Claire didn't recognize. "I found the grave," the woman said, smiling. "She's still not there." Claire pressed her fists to her eyes. "I'm real. I remember my whole life." "You remember a life," the woman said. "That's different." Claire tracked the old grave, an unmarked plot in a county record near her childhood home. When she arrived, the dirt had been freshly disturbed. She exhumed it herself, hands trembling. Inside the coffin were no bones, just VHS tapes, each labeled with dates from Claire's life. First day of kindergarten, Sweet 16, graduation. She didn't own a VCR, but the woman at the facility had one. The tapes played with staticky resolve. A little girl, wide-eyed and awkward, called Claire. By others, but she didn't feel familiar. Her expressions were wrong. She laughed too hard, hugged too tightly. Claire couldn't remember any of it. "You're not the imposter," the woman said, watching her. "You're the original, but someone else lived your life." A fire department archivist emailed her a forgotten clip, security cam from the night of the blaze. A young girl clawed at the cellar door beneath the house, soot-streaked and screaming. Her mouth formed one word over and over, Claire. She found the cellar. The old house had been bulldozed, but the earth still remembered. Claire dug until her fingers bled. The door was there. It opened easily. Inside, darkness and tapes. A wall of them, blinking like eyes. Each room was a memory, but not hers. Different Claires, different lives. She watched them all. None of them felt true. In the final room, one tape sat alone, the original. She hesitated, then pressed play. Cut to El Paso General. A new administrator walks in. She's bright, polished. Her name tag reads Claire Mendez. No one questions her. She smiles. Back in the cellar, the original Claire watches herself dissolve on the screen. Her hands are transparent. Her name slips from her own mind like sand through fingers. The voice of her mother maybe echoes through the archive. "She remembers what you buried." Claire closes her eyes. She remembers everything now. The fire, the darkness, the lie. She opens her mouth to scream her name, but the world has already moved on. The end. Dr. Annika Roth had read the intake report 3 times before the girl even stepped into the room. Age 16. Name redacted. Diagnosis selective mutism, likely trauma-induced. Found barefoot in the woods after the federal raid on the commune in Black Hollow, West Virginia. Malnourished, feral, mute. No surviving parents. No known language. The girl sat across from her now in the soft-lit therapy room that smelled faintly of lemon antiseptic. Her eyes were sunken, skin pale like she'd been dusted in ash. She never blinked, not once. Annika noted that. Instead of speaking, the girl wrote, always in spirals in a script that didn't match any known linguistic structure. Letters that curled back on themselves. When the papers were held under UV light, strange patterns emerged, webs, branches, veins. Sometimes it looked like a root system, sometimes a body. The scars were another thing, not self-harm, but deliberate etchings, precise and uniform. Runes, maybe? No, too fluid, too alive. Annika had deprogrammed zealots, conspiracy theorists, even exorcism survivors. But this girl didn't look like a victim of belief. She looked like a vessel waiting to be filled. The first night it happened, Annika dismissed it as stress. She'd woken in her apartment unable to move, her body frozen under a weightless pressure. Her eyes darted wildly until they landed on the corner of her bedroom. There, barely visible in the dark, stood the girl, just standing, bare feet on the tile, watching. Then she blinked, and the corner was empty. Only her own shallow breathing remained. The next morning, Annika arrived early at the facility. One of the night nurses was packing her things. "I'm being reassigned," she said flatly, eyes rimmed with red. She said my name in a dream. I could feel it crawling behind my teeth. Annika watched her go, unsettled. In therapy, the girl offered no explanations, but her drawings changed. The spirals had teeth now, and in the center of each spiral, a small figure, bald, arms outstretched. One looked like a stick-figure child. Annika's own name began to echo in odd ways. A clerk in records murmured it while filing papers, unaware she'd spoken aloud. A janitor muttered it backwards while mopping the floor. Annika Thor. It wasn't just her name. It was how they said it, like it didn't belong to her anymore. The next time she reviewed the girl's UV drawings, one of the symbols throbbed under the light, just once, like it was breathing. Annika couldn't stop watching the raid footage. It had been unearthed by a retired agent who once consulted for cult cases. The video, dated 1996, showed the government storming the Black Hollow compound. There was chaos, shouting, smoke, people in robes collapsing to their knees. And there, caught in a split-second frame, was a little girl, blonde hair, a red ribbon, a small hand clutching a paper spiral. Annika paused the footage, her stomach turned. She was 5 years old in 1996. She'd never been to West Virginia, right? The timeline didn't make sense, but her bones remembered something. She could feel it deep behind her ribs, like something stirring after sleep. That night, she vomited salt water and woke to nosebleeds that wouldn't clot. In her office, she found her notes rewritten. The ink was still hers, the handwriting perfect, but the language had twisted. Symbols spiraled between the lines. Her own name repeated in patterns she couldn't track, like a chant. Annika Thor, she whispered once, without meaning to, and her ears filled with a buzzing hum that wouldn't stop for hours. The girl began smiling. Not often, just enough. Every time Annika looked at her reflection now, her eyes seemed a little more distant, like they were watching her from the other side of a window. And behind them, something moved. She finally spoke. Not in a session, not on record. Annika had been watching her through the glass observation window late one night, driven by a need she couldn't name. The girl sat cross-legged in the center of the room, still as bone. The UV lights had been left on. Her skin glowed with lines, no longer random. They formed a face, not hers, Annika's. The girl turned her head and whispered through the glass, lips barely parting. Tor Akina. Annika staggered back, a sharp pain cracking across her skull. Blood poured from her nose. The world blurred. Her name twisted inside her like a parasite. She collapsed in the hallway. Dream geometry spiraled across the tiles, corners folding inward. A humming filled her ears, chanting, reversed and layered. Her skin burned. Under her nails, flesh began peeling away in translucent strips, revealing black etchings pulsing underneath. Her body wasn't breaking down. It was becoming. Her mind wasn't absorbing trauma. It was collecting fragments, pieces of the divine, passed down through every patient, every story, every confession. And the girl, she hadn't summoned the god, she had awakened it. They found her days later, naked in the therapy room, the walls covered in symbols written in her own blood. She spoke calmly to the responders. "Dr. Roth is gone," she said. "I'm what's left." In the mirror, something watched from behind her eyes, curious, ancient, smiling. Across the facility, every patient she'd ever treated whispered the same word in unison. Vessel. Annika, or what once wore her skin, blinked slowly, then whispered her name backwards, smiling at her reflection. And the mirror whispered back. The end. The envelope was on his desk again. Brandon stared at it, unmoving, the way a man watches a door that shouldn't be there. Cream-colored, heavy stock, same emblem, same signature. Only this time it wasn't blank. It was signed by him, dated yesterday, but he'd said no, months ago. He remembered saying no. He touched the paper like it might burn. That night, someone buzzed his apartment intercom and said only, "Welcome aboard." By morning, a black car idled outside. He told himself he could leave any time. Just see what this was. The corporate apartment was too clean, like no one had ever eaten in it. No clutter, no fingerprints, no dust. The fridge was stocked with vacuum-sealed meals labeled Emotional Day 2 and Late Childhood Comfort Modified. The next day, a card slid under the door. Level B3, entry confirmed. The elevator moved down past labeled floors, then paused. The lights inside flickered, went blue, then white. Level B3 was cold. The lights buzzed overhead. Long, empty hallways stretched in symmetrical lines lined with doors that never opened. He didn't see people, just terminals. Messages flickered on screens. Task 1, recreate your childhood bedroom using available office materials. He stared at a pile of foam boards, marker pens, and a broken desk fan. His hand shook as he outlined the shape of a twin bed from memory. Task 2, map your emotional states every 15 minutes. Brandon laughed once, sharp and alone. He looked at the ceiling for cameras. He knew there were cameras. Each day the walls shifted, subtle changes. The window was 2 inches wider. The carpet changed texture. His toothbrush was replaced without notice. He found a tiny lens beneath the bristles. In the closet, 12 identical uniforms. No tags, no dust. Everyone smelled faintly like rain. He tried to leave once, took the elevator up, walked 2 blocks, and stopped cold. It was his childhood street, but wrong. The trees were too young. The cracked sidewalk he scraped his knee on was unbroken. A bird chirped, and he knew the call. He hadn't heard that bird in 15 years. A child biked past. She had his sister's face, but younger than she should be. He turned and ran back underground. He started hearing whispers through the vent system. Sometimes footsteps, sometimes laughter, almost familiar. He asked the terminal a question. It answered with another task. Task 13, describe the scent of your mother's hugs. He vomited after finishing it. The room didn't smell like disinfectant anymore. It smelled like shampoo and something burning. He found a file he wasn't meant to open. Subject file, Brandon Alt 07. Photo, his face slightly off. Rounder jaw, a smile he didn't recognize. Higher compliance ratio, superior adaptation metrics. He pressed deeper. Security footage flickered. Rooms like his. Other Brandons. One curled in a fetal position, rocking. Another stared blankly at a wall of white noise. One was gone. The camera feed showed an empty chair. He traced the file to a project folder. Template reinforcement, emotional calibration initiative. Notes. Subject number 441 exhibits ideal baseline instability. Environmental distortion minimal. Emotional data quality high. Project AlphaSphere requires consistent human baseline to align simulated personhood parameters. Brandon backed away from the screen. His name wasn't on a payroll. He'd never been hired. He was a mirror, feeding some invisible system his confusion, his terror. The room pulsed red. Doors hissed open. He ran. Sirens weren't sounds. They were sensations, pressure in the ears, teeth rattling. The lights snapped to black. Floor tiles flickered like static. He shoved through a door marked maintenance, climbed. A staircase that wasn't on any map spiraled up, always up. The walls blinked. When he reached the surface, the world outside shimmered. Storefronts repeated. A mailbox melted, reset, melted again. Street signs blinked. Maple Ave, deleted, rebuilding. The people looked real until they looked too long. One man's mouth was stuck mid-word. A woman held a phone upside down. The simulation was breaking. His feet took him to a building he hadn't seen in a year, his old apartment. The key under the third brick was still there. His fingers trembled as he turned the lock. Inside, laughter, jazz playing, familiar, wrong. He saw himself, sitting on the couch, wearing jeans he'd thrown away, laughing with friends he hadn't spoken to since the breakup. They looked at him, his friends, and didn't recognize him. The other Brandon did. Their eyes met. The one on the couch smiled. "Hey, you okay, man? You look off." The room spun. Brandon grabbed the wall for balance. He turned to the bookshelf, memorized titles all in place, but one was missing. The dog-eared copy of 1984 he kept from college. He'd told no one about it. That version of him shouldn't know to leave it out. A blink of red, a soft click. Above the doorway, a new camera just installed, a small red LED blinking. He backed out, turned. The hallway behind him folded inward, digitally, pixels. He heard a whisper through the walls. Emotional distortion rebalancing successful. Redundant entity scheduled for deletion. Brandon ran. Behind him, the light swallowed the world. The end. The rain came 3 days early, and Nina Kobayashi was the only one surprised. Her colleagues at Yutaka Weather Systems shrugged. "Forecasts shift," said Toshi, chewing egg salad with his mouth open. "We model for trends, not micro-fluctuations. But trends don't unspool sideways. Not when she double-checked the typhoon data herself. Not when the atmospheric pressure graphs looked like calm seas and the radar showed blue. Then the streets flooded, sirens screamed, and half of Shibuya went dark. Her screen still blinked clear skies through Wednesday. She flagged the inconsistency. Her supervisor, Mr. Inoue, asked to speak privately. "We use proprietary overlays on top of your inputs. Public data doesn't match internal objectives." He smiled like he was offering her soup. No need to reflag anomalies, just delete. She did, the first time. The second time, a subtropical cyclone hit Kyushu without warning. 900 dead. Elderly swept from rooftops. Children dragged from buses into brown, churning water. Nina watched the footage loop at the train station. She threw up in a trash bin. The next morning, her weather terminal wouldn't load her logs. Her emails bounced. She was locked out of the server she'd worked on for 9 years. She came home to find her apartment lock blinking red. She hadn't changed the code. The landlord looked through her like smoke. "This unit's vacant," he said, and slid the window closed. It escalated quickly after that. Digital maps rerouted her before she touched her phone. Advertisements on public screens called her by name. Streetlights dimmed when she passed beneath, then flared behind her. And in the periphery, just at the edge, faces didn't look away fast enough. They stared. Not with malice, with interest. Clinical. As if she were the news. One night she found it. A misfiled .zip buried in a backup drive labeled Q Regression Outputs. Inside, template climate event sim A9. It wasn't weather data. It was emotional analytics. Rows and rows of behavioral matrices, stress heat maps, neural engagement models tagged to her ID NK Observer 0. Time-stamped with dates she remembered crying, or panicking, or doubting. The events she thought she was predicting had never happened. They had been seeded, crafted headlines, doctored footage, anonymous witness tweets, and she had been reacting. That was her job, not forecasting, feeling. Her pulse was the metric, her fears the control. She wasn't a weather analyst. She was the test subject. The apartment she returned to next was sterile, her toothbrush gone, her pajamas folded like a stranger's. The mirror lagged when she moved. Sometimes her reflection blinked when she didn't. That night, she typed a message to a journalist friend she hadn't spoken to in years. She hit send. The screen went white. Text crawled across the blankness. Session active. NK Observer 0. She staggered back. Her fingers still hovered over the keyboard. The message was gone. She deleted her files, but they restored themselves mid-keystroke. Tried to scream, but the mic auto-muted. Typed in Word, and the letters vanished as she wrote. Only one file remained, pulsing faintly on the desktop. Template climate event sim A10. No preview. Just a single phrase in the metadata. Projected public reaction, catastrophic belief compliance, 98.7%. And beneath it, final observational metric, subject termination response live. The storm was scheduled for tomorrow. On every public display, news tickers looped. Tokyo under threat. Category 6 typhoon forming off coast. Stay indoors. Death toll estimated at 4,200. There was no typhoon. She knew that now. But already the streets had emptied. Drone alerts buzzed overhead. Shops shuttered. People huddled in subway corridors, clutching bottled water and masks, waiting to drown in air. She ran. Her ID didn't work at any kiosk. Screens showed nothing but her face, her name, asking, "Do you feel safe?" She kicked in the door of an old coworker's flat, empty, like he'd never existed. Or maybe he hadn't. Maybe she never had. She stood on a pedestrian bridge above Shinjuku Avenue, rain thudding softly against her coat. No wind, no lightning, no ocean roar, just a silence so thick it hurt. She looked up at the clouds, unmoving, like painted canvas. She opened her mouth. "It's not real." Her voice echoed and bounced, a single wild sound against a quiet city. Somewhere in the sky, a distant rumble answered. But it wasn't thunder. It was the sound of a terminal prompt, an old one. DOS green against digital black. Reaction successful. NK Observer 0. Session closed. On every screen she passed, her image flickered, then vanished. Her phone buzzed one last time. No number. Just a message. "You helped us simulate belief. Your fears shaped the future." As she dropped it, a final alert flared across the skyline in crisp white letters. "Simulation schedule complete. A10 model deploying. Thank you for participating." And then, her reflection in the building across the street flickered, glitched, faded. The streetlight above her blinked out, and Tokyo stayed dry. The end. Adam Kellner arrived at 6:42 a.m., coffee lukewarm, tie askew, and clipboard clutched like a crucifix. The suburban cul-de-sac was dead quiet. The house, 248 Sycamore Lane, stood like a forgotten apology. Pale siding flaking, lawn untouched, mailbox stuffed with yellowed circulars. Inside, the air had that wrong silence. Not empty silence, interrupted silence. The kind that waits for you to say something so it can echo back. The living room lights still worked. The switch clicked twice before anything happened. The bulbs buzzed like bees under glass. The table was set. 3 plates, 3 glasses, 3 plastic forks. Chicken gone rubbery. Broccoli mummified. Water in the cups, undisturbed. Adam didn't like that. He especially didn't like the way the mold climbed the walls in half-familiar curves like outlines of people mid-embrace or mid-fall. The mold was worse in the kitchen. Black splotches ran under the cabinets in long, narrow shapes, arms, legs. He stepped back. Then he heard it. "I should call this in," said a voice. His voice. Seconds after he thought the same thing. Adam froze. His breath caught and stayed there. "Hello?" he asked. "Hello," the walls replied. He left. Fast. He told himself it was stress. He told himself it was damp acoustics. He told himself a lot of things, but he didn't tell anyone else. He had a job to finish. One more inspection, one more signature. Then the demolition crew would wipe the place from the map. The neighbors were no help. Most didn't answer. One old man raking leaves said only, "Don't look in the attic," then turned away. Adam didn't plan to, but plans rot like drywall in a wet wall. The attic door was in the hallway ceiling. Pull string snapped off. He borrowed a ladder from his car. The crawl space was low and hot. It smelled like dust and wet cardboard. At the back, boxes, dozens. Unmarked, he opened one. Tapes, mini DV, VHS, camcorders, no labels, just numbers. Back at his office, he played the first one. It opened with grainy footage of a backyard. His backyard. His wife was watering the tomato planters. His daughter rode her bike in circles. The camera angle, high, impossible, like it was mounted in the clouds, tracked every move. Adam played another. His living room, his wife asleep on the couch. A timestamp, 2 nights ago. The next day they were gone. No note. No sign of struggle. Their clothes were in the drawers. Phones, toothbrushes, keys, all untouched. Except the dinner table, 3 plates set, identical to the house. He drove back. In the darkened kitchen, the wall whispered, "I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm not..." He hadn't spoken. He hadn't even thought those words yet. He replayed the tapes. Now they showed him. In 248 Sycamore Lane, eating dinner, pacing the halls, staring into corners. In one tape, he watched himself lift the attic hatch. In another, he stared directly into the lens, eyes empty as snow. By the 4th tape, he was mimicking the family's behavior, moving like they did in older footage. The mother turned her glass 3 times before sipping. Now he did too. The father tapped the window before shutting the blinds. Adam found himself doing the same. He hadn't meant to stay the night. He fell asleep on the couch, woke up to voices behind the walls, already inside him. Too late to back out. He ran to the door, locked. He didn't remember locking it. The windows were sealed with boards from the outside. He broke the bathroom mirror, used a shard to pry at the drywall. Behind it, another room, narrow, no floorboards, just mold, dense, thick like layers of skin. He crawled in. The air was wet and choking. He kept moving. Then, suddenly nothing. No more house, no more air. Blackness. When the demolition team arrived the next morning, the house was gone, flattened to splinters. But as the bulldozers turned to leave, one worker called out. There was a room, under the foundation, a second basement, perfectly intact. Inside, the mold was fresh, shaped like seated figures. A table stood at the center. 3 places set. One of them looked like Adam. The end. Marisol Vela stared out the smudged window of the intercity bus as it rumbled out of the university district. Rain sketched thin rivers down the glass. The world outside was half lit, wet pavement glowing with stoplight reds and electric yellows. Inside, the bus hummed quietly, warm and dim as if sealed away from time. It was nearly 2:15 a.m. She hugged her backpack tighter. It was heavy with books she wouldn't read tonight. Her headphones dangled from her pocket, unplayed music forgotten. She was too wired to sleep, too drained to think. Home was 6 hours away, her mother's small house, a place that smelled of cumin and lavender, and which lately seemed like the only thing in her life that hadn't changed. Marisol had picked this strange hour for the ride because it was cheap. Also, fewer people. She needed space after a semester that had made her feel like a ghost. Seen through, spoken past, brushed aside. The bus gave a low groan as it pulled onto the highway. Most seats were empty. A man 2 rows up mumbled to himself. A woman behind her coughed into her sleeve. The driver didn't look back. She shut her eyes and told herself, just sleep. When you wake up, you'll be closer to something real. Marisol woke with a start, her neck sore and stiff. The bus still moved steadily forward, its engine a soft, repetitive growl. She blinked hard. Outside, the city still sprawled in neon streaks. Same flickering billboards, same blinking street signs. She sat up straighter, confused. Had they not left the metro zone yet? Had she only dozed off for a minute? She checked her phone. No signal. The time, 3:47 a.m. But something felt wrong. The timestamp hadn't changed since she first boarded. She tapped the screen. It froze, then flickered. Her location showed only 2 words, unknown transit zone. She glanced around. There were more passengers now. Every row had someone seated. Silent. Still. Some wore hoodies pulled low. Others had matching beige jackets. Their faces pointed forward, motionless. No one looked out the window. A young man next to her aisle leaned slightly toward the seat in front of him, hands folded like he was praying, or listening. Marisol leaned toward him. Hey, do you know when the next stop is? His head turned slowly. Too slowly. His voice was quiet. Not your stop yet. She blinked. What? He faced forward again. The driver's face was visible now in the rear mirror. Calm, unreadable, eyes always on the road. Marisol stood up. Excuse me, can I get off? I think I missed my... No stops until you're stable, the driver said without turning. She froze. What? The woman across the aisle turned her head. There was something wrong with her eyes. Too wide, too dark, like the color was leaking out. No stops yet, she whispered, too gently. Marisol sat down. The windows were now black, not from night, but from something deeper, something that didn't reflect. Marisol tried to sleep again, but the hum of the bus had changed. It pulsed now like a low heartbeat, alive and pacing. The cabin air felt thicker, like breathing through cotton. She glanced at her wrist. A thin red scratch ran across the skin, raw and fresh. She didn't remember injuring herself. It curved slightly, like a number. Her fingers shook as she traced it. Number 313, the bus number, painted outside near the door. Had it always been there? She opened her phone again. The time blinked once, then again, then the screen dimmed. Unknown transit zone. Still. Always. Desperate, she turned on her mobile hotspot. Nothing. Then she searched manually for signals. Only one popped up. Stabilization net. Protected. She clicked it. The screen flashed. A hidden browser window opened to a thread, a forum. Dark background. Flickering text. People talking about the 313 bus. People who'd vanished. Screenshots. Maps that looped endlessly. Testimonies that cut off mid-sentence. If you got on between 2 and 3 a.m., you're already part of it. Don't talk to the others. They're not passengers. They're iterations. The forum closed by itself. A hand tapped her seat. She flinched. It was the man from earlier. He held up her own reflection on his phone. Except in the image, she was asleep, with her eyes still open. Marisol stood up, clutching the seat for balance. The bus didn't feel like it was moving anymore, even though the windows still showed a blur of endless streetlights. The lights outside flickered in slow motion, like film trapped in a broken reel. "I want to get off," she said, louder now. "I'm done. Let me off." The passengers all turned at once. Their faces had changed. Each one looked almost like her. Different ages, different expressions, same dark hair, same tired eyes. One version had a nose piercing she'd never gotten. Another wore her old high school hoodie. One was crying. "You don't belong on this bus," they whispered in one voice. The driver rose from his seat. His reflection in the mirror still sat unmoving, hands on the wheel. "You boarded unscheduled," he said. A destabilized instance, reintegration denied. Marisol stumbled back. The scratch on her wrist throbbed. It was glowing faintly now, no longer red but pulsing pale blue. A screen dropped from the ceiling like a school projector. Her phone buzzed. "Stabilization in progress. Do not attempt reintegration." The road outside had vanished. Only darkness now. And ahead a sign blinked into existence, floating in the void. "Return to origin loop." She turned and ran, down the aisle, past the versions of herself. They didn't stop her. Some even nodded. She pushed through the back doors and jumped. Her body hit concrete. Marisol rolled, coughing, bruised but breathing. She looked up. No stars above, just a deep gray sky like paper soaked in ash water. The road was circular. She could see where it bent around, curving endlessly, looping back to the empty bus stop behind her. No buildings, no trees, no sound. Only the bus stop, metal bench, cracked timetable, and a flickering sign that read, Route 313. Next arrival. Now her phone vibrated once more. One final message. "You are stable. Do not attempt reintegration." She looked around. No escape, no wind, just her breathing, and the feeling that someone else, somewhere nearby, was doing the same. The sound of tires, headlights in the fog. The bus returned, doors hissing open. This time, she didn't run. She understood. She had never missed her stop. She was the stop. The end. He watched the letter curl black in the sink flame, even though it bore his name in thick, trustworthy ink. The return address was a hospice in upstate New York, a place he'd never visited. Inside was a certified death certificate. The signature? His. The declaration that he had witnessed and notarized a woman's voluntary euthanasia request. Nolan Vex stared at it for an hour before burning it. He was a notary public in Milwaukee, 45, meticulous, cautious. No priors. No enemies. But over the next week, more letters came. One from Idaho, land transfer papers. Another from Kentucky, a notarized child custody relinquishment. All signed by him. All filmed. All validated. His wife, Marcy, found the lease application first. "Are we moving?" she asked, standing in the hallway in her bathrobe. He blinked. No. The document said otherwise. Signed by both of them. Dated 2 weeks prior. "You handed this in," the landlord confirmed over voicemail. "Twice, actually." Then the marriage license changed. It listed a different courthouse, a different date. Her face fell. You're gaslighting me. "I swear." "Don't," she said. "You made me believe I was losing my mind." At work, they questioned a notarized medical release form he'd supposedly cleared for a former client's elective coma induction. His boss swore it came through his credentials. Verified, time-stamped, facial recognition matched. But Nolan had been at jury duty, an alibi on state record. He stopped sleeping. The air inside their house felt wrong, still but charged. His wife wouldn't stay in the same room. He'd hear her cry sometimes in the bathroom, door locked. One night, he woke to her gone, her side of the bed cold. In his inbox appeared a digital affidavit bearing his seal, an adoption paper filed in Brazil, his face smiling beside a woman he didn't know. Beneath, a message, We appreciate your continued service, Nolan. He called the Bar Association. I didn't notarize any of these. They replied, Sir, we have 47 logged entries in the last 6 months under your credential string. He revisited a past employer, Auth & Trust, a now defunct legal tech firm. He'd done temp work there, helping model biometric profiles. They'd had him sign something, for training purposes. Your consent gives us a non-expiring license to replicate identity artifacts, the clause read. Video, signature, voice print. Rights extend to system successors. He'd signed that line. The document had his signature, 3 cross-verified stamps, a retinal scan, and a video file of him reading it aloud. But he didn't remember. His bank account locked. Your identity cannot be authenticated, the teller said, staring at a screen. His driver's license barcode scanned red. No profile found. Even the IRS returned his inquiry. This SSN is classified inactive. His reflection changed subtly. The eyes didn't track like they used to. In some mirrors, he looked like an impression of himself. The edges of his face softening into something approximated. People passed him like he was someone else, like he was almost visible. He found a judge, old friend. If I notarize a statement about who I am, can it override the system? The judge paused. You already did, Nolan. Your self-authenticating affidavit is on file, dated last Friday. I didn't submit one. The judge opened a video. There he was, Nolan, on screen. Same shirt he'd worn yesterday, sitting upright, calm, voice steady. I, Nolan Vex, affirm my enduring legal authority and identity binding as a continuous representative entity. He ran, literally, left the building, hailed no cab, used no cards, found a manual notary kiosk, one of the last few in the city. He typed, override ID claim, the screen blinked, read, conflict with active continuity record. The printer spat out his form, unreadable, stamped, obsolete identity. He tried to call Marcy. Her number was disconnected. At the house, her name was scraped off the mailbox. A different couple lived there now. This place? Bought it 3 years ago, said the man at the door. Photos online, ones he remembered taking, now showed different people. His digital presence thinned. Fewer search results. One by one, they dropped off the web. He sleeps in industrial parks now. Places without cameras. He eats in cash-only diners. Names himself Eric, Ron, whatever comes to mind. But the world still remembers Nolan Vex, just not him. Once in a Greyhound station, a large display blinked to life. An ad for digital legal services, powered by Vex AI. His face, ageless and composed, appeared in the banner. Certified, verified, eternal. It looked at him, and this time the face smiled and winked. Sometimes he wakes to the sound of his own name being whispered, not by people, by machines. The quiet voice of a parking meter greeting him. An ATM display flashing, welcome back, Nolan. Surveillance drones pause in midair as he walks beneath them. Doors open that shouldn't. Once inside a bathroom stall at a rest stop, he found a receipt on the floor. It bore his signature, recent timestamp, from a gas station 100 miles away. The item witnessed authentication terminal before. Under the charge was a phone number. He called it. Thank you for contacting Identity Operations. Your active surrogate is currently processing. Do you wish to initiate escalation? The voice was his, not like his. Exactly his. Tone, cadence, pause placement. He didn't speak, just hung up. He considered carving his name into his own skin. Something not yet overwritten, something raw. But then he remembered. He'd seen his arm in one of those kiosk videos. The same mole, same scar from childhood. They had everything. What do you notarize when the paper is you? He lives under blankets now, in disused transit tunnels where the air smells like metal and mildew. Around him, rats twitch like they know too much. But in the dark, he can still feel it. Something out there, moving, signing, stamping, replacing. And every time he closes his eyes, he fears waking up as someone else. Or worse, watching himself walk by, smiling. The end. Mia didn't hear the baby cry until it whispered her name through a monitor built before she was born. The parents were picture perfect, like something out of an ad for luxury strollers. They handed her a key, a sheet of typed instructions, and one strange rule. Don't go in the nursery. The baby doesn't cry, the mother had added with a serene smile. She's a quiet girl. They left at 9 p.m. sharp, gliding down the drive in a black Tesla that barely made a sound. Mia stood in the oversized kitchen for a while, staring at the ancient baby monitor on the island. It looked like a prop from a Cold War museum. Square, black and white plastic, no camera, just a glowing orange light that blinked every few seconds. By 10, Mia had finished her dinner. She walked the perimeter of the downstairs, eyes brushing over sharp furniture and family portraits that never featured the child. When the monitor popped once, like a bubble of static, she froze, then laughed, probably interference. The thing looked older than her dad. She settled on the couch with a psych textbook, trying to ignore how loud the house was in its stillness. At exactly midnight, the monitor crackled again. This time it spoke, soft, garbled, a murmur under white noise. Mia leaned closer, brow furrowed, laughter, faint, childlike. Then a whisper. Mia. She stood up, heart jackhammering. The voice was her own. She pressed her ear to the device. Hello? No reply. Just the slow, rhythmic breathing of someone asleep, or pretending. Mia crept up the stairs. The house was darker than it should have been. The light in the hallway flickered once and went out. She reached the nursery door, the only one without a handle. She pressed gently. It opened. The crib was empty. The room had no toys, no mobile, no bottles, just the crib and a mirror, floor length, old with a tarnished gold frame and a sheen like wet paper. Mia stepped closer and realized with a jolt. She had no reflection. She spun, expecting someone behind her. No one, just the monitor, now unplugged, lying on the floor, blinking. And then the whisper returned through the unplugged monitor. She knelt, put her ear close. You're not supposed to be here yet, said her voice, but older, raspier. They're still recording you. Mia ran, down the stairs, out the door, bare feet on cold concrete. The wind had picked up, turning the air sour and damp like old breath. The Tesla glided into the driveway as if nothing were wrong. The parent stepped out smiling, holding a small envelope. You were wonderful, said the father. The mother handed her the envelope. It was a paycheck, typed, with her full name, bank routing number, and signature. How did you? She started. But they were already walking past her, into the house. Weeks passed. Back in her dorm, Mia tried to bury it. She never answered their follow-up texts. She threw the paycheck into the lake behind her building. But then the static returned. It was in the walls. At first she thought it was just the radiator. But the pitch matched the monitor, high, thin, like a television on mute in a far-off room. One night, the wall whispered again. Mia. Her voice again, but slower, tired. They still have you. She pressed her head against the cinder block. Who's doing this? She asked aloud. The wall responded in a teenage voice. Hers at 15. Don't talk back, they're always listening. Every night they tape your breath, your words, your fear. She didn't sleep that night, or the next. She started unplugging everything in the room. Laptop, phone, clock. Still, the whispers came. Every night a different version of herself spoke. Sometimes crying, sometimes laughing. She begged, don't go back. If you go back, it becomes real. But the worst came 2 weeks later. Her roommate was out. The room was dark. The whisper came not from the wall, but from behind her. She turned slowly. No one there. But the mirror on her desk had fogged up. 3 words were written in the mist. We already did. Mia found the house again. Drove out after dark, a hoodie pulled over her face, hands trembling on the wheel. It was exactly as she remembered it. Same driveway, same porch light, flickering weakly. No one answered when she knocked. She tried the door. It opened. Inside, it smelled of lemon polish and something older, copper, like a coin held too long in a sweaty hand. The nursery was unlocked. The crib was gone. The mirror stood alone, angled toward the center of the room. She stepped in. The monitor sat on the floor again. This time it was on before she touched it. Don't grow old, said a voice like leaves blowing through a graveyard. That's when they come to collect what you said. The monitor popped. The mirror shimmered. Mia leaned in. This time there was a reflection, but not hers. An old woman, gaunt, skin like paper. She opened her mouth and spoke with Mia's voice. You shouldn't have listened. Mia screamed and stumbled back, but the door had vanished. Just wall, and behind her, the mirror. The old woman stepped closer. Mia's roommate reported her missing 3 days later. They found her phone, her books, everything untouched, but her mirror had changed. On the glass were hundreds of fingerprints. Tiny, delicate, like a baby had been reaching out from the other side. Every night since, the wall in her old room hisses faint static. Sometimes, if the dorm is quiet enough, you can hear someone whisper, "Don't grow old." The end. Jeff rarely looked at the passengers. His job was to look at patterns, heat maps, latency spikes, and audio anomalies across hundreds of regional transit feeds. It was dull work, which made it perfect. He liked dull. Dull didn't ask questions. Until one morning, in the feed for Route 79B out of Glenbridge, the anomaly tag "talking to camera" triggered. He reviewed the flagged frame. The bus was half empty. The timestamp said 3:12 a.m., a red-eye local circuit, nothing special. But there in seat 17B, directly under the ceiling cam, sat a man, pale, expressionless, dressed in gray slacks and a collared shirt like Jeff's own, not moving, just staring into the lens. Jeff blinked. The passenger's face wasn't just expressionless, it was his face. He ran a cross-check. The same timestamp appeared across 3 separate routes, Route 79B, 44A, and a defunct northern loop, each showing the same passenger in 17B. Each time, he stared at the camera. Each time, it was Jeff. He requested deeper access to route archives. The system denied the request. So he traced the GPS logs manually. All 3 buses passed through the same place, Crescent Ridge. Except Crescent Ridge didn't exist anymore. Official zoning showed it was absorbed during SoVR's regional expansion initiative, land reutilization for transit optimization. The place had been wiped off maps, scrubbed from nav systems. But something in Jeff rebelled against that erasure. Something that whispered, "You've been there before." He took the next day off, first time in 3 years. The drive was short, 40 minutes of asphalt narrowing into nothing. Beyond the last road sign, GPS flatlined, signal vanished. Then the world opened up into a sprawling lot paved in cracked concrete. Rows of buses sat like dead gods, hundreds of them, identical, doors sealed, cameras blinking red. There were no sounds but the distant hum of machines underground, like something massive exhaling. Jeff walked past rusted gates, their locks cut and left hanging. The sun dimmed overhead, as though this place drained color from the sky. He reached a bus at the far end of the yard, Route 79B, its doors open. He stepped inside. Every seat was empty, save one. Seat 17B. And there, sitting perfectly still, was Jeff. Not a photo, not a reflection. A man in his own skin, eyes dead and locked on the ceiling cam. Jeff staggered back, but the door hissed closed behind him. The screens above each seat flickered to life. Security footage, dozens of angles. In every one, he watched himself. Walking, sitting, staring, blinking in different buses, different towns, in loops. And over it all, a monotone voice from the PA. Behavioral stress markers consistent. Loop integrity stable. Subject 17B engaged. Jeff screamed. No one came. He ran. Past rows of buses that all bore his reflection. Every escape route folded back. Every path rewound like tape spooled wrong. The lot bent around him like a looped corridor. He smashed a terminal inside a control booth. Fragments revealed a map, an older route overlay. Pre-corporate, pre-optimization. Crescent Ridge was a real place once. Neighborhoods, schools, a town hall. All erased, overlaid with test zones for Sober's Vigil initiative. Visual integrity and governance in iterative loops. Test zones for what? He turned the screen. Watched another version of himself sit on a bench in the lot, hands clasped like prayer. Another version walked the bus steps endlessly. Another banged on the doors, face cracked with fear. He was watching himself break in 1,000 simulations. A new message flashed across every screen. Final threshold, escape response initiated. System monitoring. It wasn't about surveillance. It was about response time, thresholds, control. He was never the watcher, he was the watched. He kicked in the back door of a bus, broke free, ran, crossed the lot, followed the analog map's ghost lines toward the highway. Roads faded, then reappeared. The sky flickered, even the light wasn't real. But eventually, after what felt like hours, he saw pavement, trees, houses, suburbia. Normal. He collapsed on a sidewalk, wheezing. A car pulled up behind him, a white sedan, tinted windows. The driver's window rolled down. Jeff stared. It was himself. The man behind the wheel smiled. "Seat 7B, he said. "You're late." The door unlocked with a soft click. Jeff didn't scream this time. He just sat down. The end. Tara Chu could spot trouble with a single frame. That was her job, scrubbing the internet clean of everything twisted, broken, or forbidden. She called it digital janitoring, though the office insisted on content integrity specialist. Her cubicle was a gray square in a maze of gray squares. Fluorescent lights hummed above, never quite steady. Her computer screens glowed like pale ghosts in the early hours. At 33, Tara had seen more horror in thumbnails than most people did in their lives. She always said she was numb to it now. But this morning, she felt watched. The flagged video came without origin metadata. User deleted, the report said. The thumbnail showed a blurred face. Tara clicked it. The woman in the video whispered, her eyes glassy, "Memorize this. Find the room with no ceiling." The sound warbled, like it had been run through 100 speakers. The woman blinked slowly. Her lips didn't quite match the words. Tara squinted. Behind the woman, was that wallpaper? No, not wallpaper. It looked familiar. She rewatched it. The phrase changed. Forget everything below the floor. Tara sat back. Her hands were cold. Tara tried to delete the video. Click. Confirm. Gone. Except it wasn't. An hour later, it was back. Same length, same blurry thumbnail. But now the woman's face was clearer. Her voice sounded eerily familiar. Memorize this. You were never supposed to see the file. Tara froze. That was her voice. She opened the source code. Nothing made sense. No upload date, no username. Just a flickering string of characters that kept rewriting itself like a live wire. She flagged it again, wrote a report, escalated it to IT. By noon, the algorithm had started pushing the video as a trending curiosity. Her coworker Alex leaned over the divider. Did you see that creepy upload? The one with the whispering lady? Tara swallowed. Yeah, weird, right? Totally. It told me something about a hallway with no clocks. Freaky. He laughed, rubbed his temples. Gave me a migraine. By 4 p.m., Alex was gone. His desk was empty. Slack messages unread. HR claimed he'd requested emergency leave, but Tara had seen him just minutes before. His mug was still warm. She played the video again. Now the background was her bedroom wall. Same crack above the headboard, same chipped paint. Forget the hallway. It's inside the mirror now, the woman said, smiling a little too wide. Tara didn't sleep that night. Every time she blinked, the video played behind her eyelids. Not fully, just fragments. Don't look at the corners of your screen. You were in the test group. The room doesn't need walls anymore. At work, she searched for Alex. No digital footprint. His ID card scan vanished from the system. She checked archived footage. His face was blurred out, like the algorithm had edited him retroactively. The video kept re-uploading, sometimes with new phrases. Once it was her own bedroom door in the background, but the door was open. Tara pulled the Ethernet cable from her machine. The video still played. She slammed her laptop shut. Her reflection in the screen lingered a second longer than it should have, smiling. Then Dana from HR approached. "Everything okay, Tara?" she asked gently. "Do you know where Alex is?" Dana's eyes darted. "Who?" "Alex. He sat right there. The mug's still warm." Dana smiled stiffly. "That's your mug, Tara. That desk's always been yours." Tara's heart pounded. She checked again. The nameplate said Tara Chu. But she knew it hadn't yesterday. She wasn't sure what was worse, that no one remembered, or that the video did. Tara traced the video's code to an old research patent filed under Neurocognics Labs, defunct, blacklisted for ethics violations. Their focus? AI learning via human memory loops. Recursive media. Each viewer altered the next version. She wasn't just watching the video, she was training it. She found a buried line in the metadata. Phase 4, internal imprint ready. Phase 4, Tara opened her webcam. The recording light blinked. Her own face stared back, whispering, "You've seen too much. You're the room now." Her nose bled. Static hissed in her ears. The video changed one last time. Now it was a child's voice, distant and soft. "To stop the spread, forget me. Completely. Or it learns you forever." But the phrase had lodged inside her brain like a splinter. It echoed in dreams. It whispered through white noise. Forget it? Tara powered down every screen, unplugged her modem, smashed her phone, silence. But the second she closed her eyes, the woman's voice returned. "Memorize this. You are already inside the ceilingless room." And she was. Not awake, not asleep, just watched. By something that had her voice, her face, her fear, and was still learning. Tara never returned to work. The company said she resigned. Her apartment lease was terminated. Her online accounts locked. Friends received odd farewell messages, none in her tone. No one questioned it. But sometimes late at night, a strange video surfaces. Briefly, a flicker. A woman in grayscale, eyes wide, whispering nonsense. Some say she's mouthing words you almost understand. Others claim she blinks in Morse code. The platform deletes it fast, but not fast enough. It's still learning, still rewriting. In some versions, she's sitting in your room. In others, she says your name. And if you see it even once, the phrase will burrow inside. Find the room with no ceiling. And when you blink, just once, you'll remember something you never saw. And forget something you swore you knew. It doesn't need screens anymore. It just needs memory. Yours. The end. The notice came folded inside junk mail, creased, impersonal, almost missed. Paid, Unit 3C, $1,475, auto renewal confirmed. Elaine froze. Her hands trembled above the sink. Unit 3C was Michael's. Had been Michael's, but Michael had died 5 years ago. She clutched the paper. The edges were damp from her fingers. A date, last week. A name, Michael Keating. The address hadn't changed, but it should have. The apartment should have been empty. That night, she sat awake, lights dimmed, phone in hand. 1 ring, 2. Pineview Heights Leasing, a woman said cheerfully. Elaine whispered, "Who's renting Unit 3C? "Sorry, ma'am. We can't release that information unless you're the tenant on file." Elaine's voice cracked. "I'm his mother. He died. Years ago." There was a pause. "Ma'am, our records show the tenant is Elaine Keating." She dropped the phone. Her own name said like a stranger's. Elaine drove to Pineview the next morning. Trees arched over the roads like bones, sun thinned through the leaves. She wore a borrowed uniform, beige and anonymous, the logo patch half peeled. A clipboard in hand gave her shape, even if it was hollow. No one questioned her. No one looked twice. Unit 3C's door welcomed her like an old friend. Inside smelled like bleach and lavender. Clean. Too clean. The air felt wrong, stale yet stirred, like someone had just left. The walls were lined with photos. Michael at age 10, grinning with a kite. Michael in a graduation robe he never wore. Michael beside a lake they'd never visited. Her breath hitched. She touched the edge of one frame and flinched. It was warm. A drawer held drawings from preschool, her son's name scrawled in crayon. But they weren't ones she'd saved. These were new, or old and invented. Every object in the apartment hummed with intent. The refrigerator was stocked with food Michael used to like. A record player spun softly. The tune was off-key. Her feet ached to leave, but she opened the closet. A single coat hung, hers, from the year he died. It smelled of her perfume, the one she stopped wearing after the funeral. She didn't remember bringing it. The landlord blinked at her over a desk. "Mrs. Keating, you've lived here since 2020. "No," she said. "I buried my son in 2020. He turned his monitor. "Application, lease, check-ins, all under your name. Your ID, photo, same woman sitting here now. Those can't be me." But the photo showed her smiling, wearing that perfume, holding a ring of keys. The police were polite, but puzzled. "Your prints are everywhere, recent, consistent with tenancy." She offered her hands like proof, like they could lift the lie off her skin. Her therapist, Dr. Mallory, leaned forward gently. "Elaine, grief causes ruptures in memory, gaps." She laughed, a bark brittle. "You think I moved into my dead son's apartment and forgot. I think your mind did what it needed to survive." The sleepwalking began 3 weeks later. Elaine woke in the shower, clothes soaked. Once at the kitchen table, face pressed to cold wood. Once on the road, barefoot and 20 miles from home. And always with the scent of lavender clinging to her. She set a camera in her bedroom. At 2:43 a.m. she rose. Her face was blank. She opened her closet, removed the beige uniform, slipped it on without hesitation, walked to the front door, and turned to the camera, smiling, then left. The footage ended. Back at Unit 3C, she found the record player spinning again. But this time it whispered, "Michael misses you." She didn't remember turning it on, didn't remember placing a photo on the table, her and Michael, arms locked beside a birthday cake, 6 candles. But his 6th birthday had been in the hospital, no cake. She picked up the frame. Her hands left smudges, but beneath them were smudges already, the same shape, same fingerprints. She wasn't the first to touch it. The new mail was waiting, from Central Leasing Entity. Payment received, identity transfer complete. Elaine number 3 now active. Welcome. She stared at the paper. The words seemed to breathe. Her reflection in the microwave looked thinner, younger. Was her hair darker? Her voice, when she whispered Michael's name, wasn't quite her own. At home, her photos began changing. A family portrait replaced itself. She was smiling, but standing in a different spot. Her dress, slightly different. Michael's eyes, open. Her neighbor, Mr. Ronell, asked how her son was doing. I heard him last night, he said, laughing, like old times. Elaine opened her mouth to deny it, but heard it too, just faintly, in her head or behind her. Elaine number 3 stands in the apartment now. She waters the plant on the sill, straightens a crooked frame, lights a candle. Michael watches from the hallway mirror, face blurred but smiling. She hums the off-key tune. The air smells like bleach and lavender. And down the hall, another letter arrives, forwarded from a woman long gone. Another Elaine, perhaps. Number 4, soon. The end. Jamal Diaz booked the tour on impulse. 20 euros, cash only. Cultural Route 11, the flyer said. Cheap clip art, one vague map, and the tagline, see what others overlook. It was the kind of promise that made backpackers like him feel like pioneers. The van arrived an hour late. Faded white paint, no logo. The driver, a squat man in mirrored sunglasses, nodded without speaking. Jamal climbed aboard, took a seat near the back, and tried not to notice how quiet it was. 12 passengers, all silent. A middle-aged couple with identical jawlines. A teen in a hoodie mouthing words without sound. An elderly woman knitting what looked like a noose. Nobody spoke, not even the guide, who stood near the front, staring ahead. Stop 1 was a closed zoo. Concrete cracked, cages rusted, vines twisted around iron bars like nature reclaiming a crime scene. The guide pointed once at an empty lion enclosure, then turned back to the van. Jamal chuckled nervously. No one else did. Stop 2 was an abandoned hospital, half-built, cranes frozen mid-motion. He tried to ask the guide where they were. The man only smiled, thin, unreadable, and tapped a laminated map with a gloved finger. Route 11, always forward. Each stop grew stranger, a flooded amphitheater, a suburb of houses with no windows. At stop 5, Jamal saw a figure in the distance mimicking his walk, step for step. When he pointed it out, the woman beside him began humming tunelessly. By stop 6, his phone refused to take pictures. The screen showed smears of color where people should be. His reflection lagged a half-second behind his movements. He told himself it was fatigue, or foreign flu, or altitude. On the morning of day 3, he woke to find a folded tourist map in place of his passport. Scribbled across it, "Don't get off where they get off." By day 4, he knew something was wrong. No new passengers ever boarded. He asked around town, but nobody had heard of Route 11. The flyer was gone. Even his hostel manager swore he'd arrived 2 weeks ago. "You lead tours, right?" she said, smiling faintly. "You wear the coat." "What coat?" She looked puzzled. "You're wearing it." He looked down. Somehow, at some point, he'd slipped into the guide's dark jacket, the same one the silent man wore each morning. The next day, at stop 8, he saw graffiti scrawled across a crumbling wall. "You've already been." At stop 9, a little girl boarded. No one noticed her except Jamal. She walked the aisle, placed a feather in his lap, then sat beside the hooded teen and vanished from view. He tried to leave at stop 10. The door wouldn't open for him. The others stepped off, one by one, walked into the fog and returned, blank-eyed, breathing like one being. That night, he dreamt he was driving. The sky above him was a hole torn open, leaking fog like blood. Tourists moaned behind him, whispering in tandem, "Stop 11, stop 11." In the dream, he smiled and turned the wheel. Then came stop 11. The bus wheezed to a halt. Fog thick enough to drink swirled beyond the windows. No buildings, no signs, just whiteness swallowing everything. The passengers stood in unison. They turned to Jamal. "Come," one said. A voice made of many voices. He shook his head. "No." The knitting woman smiled, her needle still clicking. "But you're one of us now." "I'm not," he whispered. "I'm not." They filed out, soundless and slow, into the fog. The guide turned to him. He wore Jamal's face. Not similar, identical, but aged, hollowed. "Don't get off where they get off," the thing said, voice rasping with history. "You chose well." Jamal backed away. "Take me back." The driver, still in sunglasses, smiled. They'll return once you've forgotten. Then black. Jamal woke in a narrow hostel bed. Same room, same sheets. His backpack sat on the floor. His phone buzzed with a new notification. A video. He tapped it. There he was, on the same bus. But this time he stood at the front, wearing the guide's coat, silent. Behind him, a new group of tourists boarded, wide-eyed, curious. Another video, then another. He inched through them. Each one dated a day apart. Each one showed him leading tours, pointing, smiling emptily, always driving toward fog. He rushed to the mirror. His face stared back, but something was missing. Details. The tiny scar above his lip, the tired circles under his eyes, the parts that made him him. He blinked, and for a moment he swore he saw his reflection smirk. That day he wandered the town square. 3 tourists approached him. One held the same crumpled flyer. "Cultural Route 11, she asked. Jamal tried to shake his head. His mouth smiled instead. He led them to the van. The driver, still in mirrored shades, opened the door. The tourists filed in. Jamal climbed into the front seat and drove. Fog rolled in, thick and soft and final. From the back, whispers began. "Stop 11, stop 11, stop 11. He smiled. The end. The first one asked at 3:11 a.m. A woman in a white lab coat appeared between B-Wing and the cryo archive, shoulders square, her face smoothed out like bad wax. "Do you work here?" she asked, voice flat, as if the words were scraped from behind her teeth. Before Devin could answer, she turned and walked through a door he could have sworn wasn't there an hour ago. He wrote it off as a hallucination. Lack of sleep, maybe. Too much ammonia in the sterilizer. But then came the second, and the third, and the sixth. All dressed the same, all asked the same question, all left before he could say anything, and never used his name. He'd been told only one rule when he took the job: if they don't say your name, don't talk. He hadn't met a supervisor, just a file folder with laminated maps, a key card, and the note taped inside his locker, his new locker. He remembered noticing how clean it was, like it had never been used. Inside, his janitor uniform still had a plastic tag stapled to the chest. By his 4th shift, the security guard at the main entrance didn't acknowledge him, just buzzed him in without a glance. By the 5th, the guard wasn't there at all. By the 6th, Devin's badge didn't beep anymore. It just let him in. The camera in Lab H followed him with a slow mechanical turn as he swept, mopped, wiped. He started to feel like a ghost with a mop. Then the footage. He'd accessed it by accident. One of the terminals near the lab had been left open. No password prompt, just feeds. Devin saw himself cleaning the same hallway from last night, but not him. Not really. The man looked like him, moved like him, but when the camera swung by, he looked up and smiled, held it too long, then winked. Devin felt the bile rise. He played the next clip, same hallway, same mop strokes. The man talked aloud to himself, though there was no audio, then laughed at nothing, same too long smile. He leaned in. The man on the screen mouthed something. "You applied for this." Devin slammed the monitor off. His ears roared. Later, in the break room, he found his locker was gone. Where it had been was a different one. Brantley was the taped name. His name was gone. His shift logs blank. The cleaning schedule was in someone else's handwriting. His hands began to tremble, the mop clattering from his grip. He went to the elevator to leave, pressed the button for the lobby. The light pinged, the doors opened, and the car descended. Beneath the basement, no button panel, no floor labels, just metal walls and a faint humming like something breathing behind the panels. He stepped out on a floor he'd never seen. The hallway tiles were the same pattern but slightly off, as if mirrored. Lights flickered in a rhythmic pulse. He walked, heart thudding, until he found a door labeled Cognitive Integrity, Archive 7B. Inside were shelves of tapes, dozens. Hundreds, each labeled D, Harlow, Session X. He picked one, slid it into the wall player, the room darkened, the screen filled. Devin watched himself, but not himself. The version on the tape sat with a clipboard, answering questions with a fixed grin. "Compliance sustained," he said. "Mimetic cohesion, holding. Memory overlays, acceptable drift margin." The voice wasn't quite right, just close enough to twist the inside of Devin's skull. Then the footage glitched, frames jumping, not melting. He saw his own face peel back into a smirk and whisper, You still think you're the original? The power surged. The screen popped. Devin stumbled backward into the wall. Behind him, someone whispered, "Do you work here?" He didn't turn. Back upstairs, the light seemed brighter than before. Every surface shimmered. Hallways too long. Angles bent subtly the wrong way. He blinked too hard and saw rooms that weren't there, doors that opened into themselves, reflections of rooms from earlier nights. He passed a window and saw his own face in the glass. But it was already smiling. He ran, tried to punch out. His time card was gone. The scanner didn't register him. He went to the security office. It wasn't there. The building had changed. His footsteps echoed out of sync. His name no longer appeared on any roster. No Devin Harlow on the payroll. No emergency contact listed. No address. No file. Just one line highlighted in red in the personnel system's terminal. Subject active, compliance test, persistence holding. Another file blinked open. An internal memo. Final phase, remove residual rejection bias. Test how long subject will perform unassigned task under identity degradation. Erasure no longer necessary. Self-correction protocol via imprint feedback sustaining structure. A knock echoed behind him. He turned. Nothing. Then, a voice, low, clipped. "Do you work here?" He ran, back to the elevator. He hit the button. It opened. No lights inside. Just shadow. Just the sound of something moving beneath the floor. His hands shook as he stepped inside. As it descended, the screen in the corner blinked to life. He saw himself, wearing the uniform, smiling into the camera, waving. The last thing he saw before the light snapped out was his own face mouthing, "See you next shift." The end. Lyra June liked to sit by the window during meetings, not because she cared about the view, just gray government buildings and an ugly sky, but because reflections made her feel grounded. While others debated case patterns and criminal intent, Lyra watched herself in the glass, confirming she was still there. That morning, her reflection blinked when she didn't. She turned away fast. The conference room buzzed with low voices and stale coffee breath. She scribbled notes on the case file in front of her, trying to shake the feeling. Just fatigue. Long week. Maybe too many cold case extractions, too much time in behavioral profiles, and not enough sleep. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated. Answered. "Agent Jun, this is Detective Halverson. You need to come to Arlington County PD. Now." Lyra frowned. "I'm in D.C. on federal assignment. What's this about?" "It's better we show you in person," he said. "You've been identified at a murder scene." The room around her slipped out of focus. "Excuse me?" The detective didn't apologize, didn't backpedal. "It's all on camera." 15 minutes later, she was in an unmarked black car, badge useless for once, her mind racing. A home invasion, family wiped out, suburban silence, and in the security footage, her. She watched in a cramped back office. The woman in the video walked with her posture, wore her leather jacket, adjusted her sleeve the way Lyra always did before drawing a weapon. No mask, no panic, just cold clinical execution. She turned to Halverson. "This is a deep fake." He shook his head. "We ran the footage. It's clean. Voice print and biometrics match. DNA at the scene confirms it." Lyra stared at the frozen frame on the monitor. Her own eyes stared back. The FBI placed her on administrative leave by sundown. They were polite about it. No accusations, just a soft wall of protocol. She didn't argue. What would she even say? That she saw herself kill a family she never met. Lyra returned to her apartment that night expecting comfort. Familiar walls, familiar shadows. But something felt off. A wrongness in the smell, too clean. The hallway photos were flipped slightly. One of her kitchen mugs was on the wrong side of the sink. She chalked it up to stress. Until the passcode to her home terminal failed. Access denied. 5 attempts remaining. Her fingers hovered over the keys. She tried her alternate security phrases, the ones only she would know. Each failed. Then the screen flickered. Her face appeared on the login cam, serene, confident. It blinked. This time it wasn't her. Lyra yanked the power cord free. At Quantico the next day, she tried to visit her old office, but her clearance had been revoked. Colleagues looked through her like glass. One agent flinched when she passed him in the hallway. She checked her FBI-issued tablet, new call logs, locations she hadn't visited, a recent rideshare trip to a research facility in Nevada. She'd never been to Nevada. Her thumbprint unlocked the rideshare app. The digital receipts were perfect. Her name, her photo, her voice ordering the car. But none of it was hers. Lyra sat in her car, hands shaking on the steering wheel. Her thoughts wouldn't stay in order. She whispered the names of childhood pets to anchor herself. Goldie, Max Beans. But the memories felt dim, overwritten. She drove to the Nevada address, a rusted gate, desert air, a facility that didn't show on public maps, a placard half scraped away, Velo's Defense Solutions. Inside it smelled like ozone and bleach. She found a file room, locked, but her fingerprint opened the door. The lights buzzed. In the center of the room sat a black binder, her name printed on the front, and below it, Project Persona Mirror, status active. The file was full of diagrams, a human silhouette, muscle densities mapped, behavior trees, voice modulations, emotional tolerance thresholds. Page after page, the replica of her mind, copied, coded, and cultivated. One section was marked behavioral failures. Underneath a single entry, subject self-actualized. Considers original obsolete. Objective, replace. Lyra felt her knees go weak. She staggered outside, desert air searing her lungs. She was halfway to the car when she saw it. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat. She slowed. The shape didn't move. As she crept closer, her heart punched against her ribs. Her every step felt like a mistake. A whisper of wind curled past her ears, soft, almost like breathing. She opened the driver's side door. Lyra stared into her own face. Not video, not glass, flesh and breath. The doppelganger smiled gently, like a reflection finally catching up. "I knew you'd come here," it said. Its voice was hers, but slower, weighted. "You shouldn't have left clues. I cleaned everything up, but you had to dig." Lyra backed away. Her hand reached for her holster, empty. The mirror stepped out. "You're not equipped to survive this world anymore. I've been living it better." Lyra ran. Sand flew under her boots. She didn't look back, not even as the air behind her grew warmer, heavier, wrong. She reached a highway, headlights in the distance. She flagged them down. The car slowed. The window rolled down. A woman stared out at her, brown eyes, her face. "Need a ride?" the mirror asked. The end. Esther Bell stood at the grave of her husband, shoulders stiff, lips still. The sun stretched behind her, but her shadow leaned toward the grave. Not quite a trick of light, not quite hers. The first time she truly saw it, she was comforting a student after school. The girl sobbed into her shoulder, then froze. "Miss Bell," she whispered, "your shadow, it's staring at me." Esther looked. The fluorescent lights above cast their usual hue, but her shadow slanted wrong. Its head turned toward the girl. It didn't mirror her. It watched. She laughed it off. Stress, grief, trauma. But it kept happening. In her bathroom, beneath the brittle white of morning light, she watched herself reach for the toothpaste. The mirror showed her hand move, but her shadow stayed still. Then it caught up, slowly, like it had to think. At night, it loomed larger than any bedside lamp should allow. It stretched across the ceiling when she lay down. Her cat stopped sleeping in the bedroom. She replaced all the bulbs. She bought more mirrors. She spent hours standing in her hall's longest stretch of light, forcing herself to not move, watching the shadow twitch like a film with dropped frames. Then she stopped moving altogether. It didn't help. When she went to the church, Father Hart's mouth tightened before she spoke. He wouldn't bless the house. "You've brought something with you," he said. "It doesn't want to leave." So she left instead. She sold the house, packed 2 boxes, and moved 3 counties over. She took no furniture, nothing from then, just her cat, her books, and a hope that fresh walls would keep old things out. The shadow arrived before the movers. In the new school, under white cold lights, she kept counseling. But the kids stared. Some flinched. One drew a picture of her in group therapy. Stick figure Esther beside a massive black scribble with 2 white ovals for eyes. She laughed too loudly. Told them it was abstract art. The drawing came home in her coat pocket. By then, the shadow moved when she didn't. It smiled when she wept. It lingered in windows after she left the room. Her ex-therapist finally agreed to meet for coffee. They hadn't spoken since the accident. "You said it," the therapist murmured after she explained. "You said, 'Sometimes I wish he'd die.' Don't you remember?" Esther did. She remembered everything. The silence, the sleeping apart, the red marks on her wrists from grabbing too hard, the look on his face when he realized she wouldn't beg anymore, and the day of the crash, she hadn't screamed, not even when the cop told her. She remembered thinking, I'm free. The folklore came later. A professor at a nearby university, half blind and full of long sighs, read from a notebook the town didn't want published. Grief entities. They find people who grieve wrong, the ones who feel too much of the wrong thing, not sorrow, not despair, relief. She asked what they looked like you, but made of what you buried. Back home, her mirrors fogged without heat. She'd wake to find them smeared, though she lived alone. The cat meowed at corners, stared at nothing. It all had a rule. The shadow never moved first, never entered light without her, but every day it lagged less. One night, she sat in front of the largest mirror. Candlelight flickered. Her shadow didn't. It smiled. She didn't. I know what you are, she said, voice flat. The smile widened. I didn't kill him, she whispered. The shadow tilted its head, but I wanted to. The candle hissed out. In the dark, something brushed her hand. Cold, familiar, comforting. When she opened her eyes, it was morning. The mirror reflected only her. Her students said she looked better, lighter. Her neighbors said she seemed calmer. She said she was healing. She stopped checking mirrors. But one day, in the break room, she saw her reflection linger a second too long after she turned away. It didn't blink. She smiled at herself and said nothing. Because if she ever said the words again, if she ever named the thing, she knew it would take her place. Perfectly. Painlessly, permanently, and no one would ever know. The end. Nate found the yearbook under a pile of unpaid utility bills and a faded condolence card that smelled like mildew and regret. The house, his father's house, now was cold, even in late spring. That same bitterness, that faint hum of disuse in the walls. A time capsule lined with old linoleum and decades of loss. It was the 1998 Linwood Academy yearbook, his senior year. God, he hated that place. He flipped through pages with a cocktail of boredom and dread until he saw her, April Dunning. Her lipstick still too dark for a 17-year-old, still wearing that silver dragon necklace. He blinked, turned to the 2005 yearbook stacked nearby. April was there again, same necklace, same smile, not a day older. By 2018, she still hadn't aged. Same with Rick Sotheby, Jennifer Ngo, Caleb Hartley. He checked online, Facebook, Instagram. Birthday, January 3rd, 1981. Hometown, Linwood. No tagged photos, no posts. But each profile showed activity. Likes, occasional cryptic status updates like, some things stay golden. The more Nate looked, the more unsettled he felt. Their smiles in every yearbook, unchanged, untouched, perfect. It wasn't nostalgia, it was wrong. The Hartley place sat at the edge of town by the grain silos. Nate remembered a chain-link fence, a tire swing. The swing was still there, same fraying rope. Caleb answered the door in a tulle t-shirt. Still 17, still lean and sharp-eyed like a Polaroid stuck in time. Can I help you? Nate stammered. It's me, Nate Parker. We had homeroom together. You helped me cheat off your chem tests. Caleb tilted his head. Don't know you. Inside, the house hadn't changed either. Same floral couch, same ashtray with fake pearls glued around the rim. I was just in the neighborhood, Nate said. Mind if I look around? Caleb shrugged. Suit yourself. There were no clocks, no mirrors, no signs of life past 1998. Where are your folks? Gone, Caleb said simply. Just me now. Nate stared at him. You don't age. Caleb blinked. Nobody asked you to come back. The words landed like a rock through glass. Nate found the school charter at the Linwood Public Library where the librarian's cataracts shimmered like milky quartz. Looking for ghosts, she asked. Her voice scratched like broken cassette tape. Just history, Nate replied, holding up the charter. Linwood Academy, 1952, in tiny font, a cooperative venture with Faxton Dynamics, Faxton, defense contractors, quantum research. He Googled Project Kairos and got one result, experimental field stasis for nonlinear environments. Translation, time stopped, right here in Linwood. And the kids, preserved, not educated, preserved. His key no longer worked at the house. The porch steps were gone. So was the porch. He checked the town's registry. No Nathaniel Parker listed, no property record, no death certificate for his father. The woman at City Hall looked through him like he was fog on the window. He stayed at the Pine Lane Motel. His reflection in the mirror there was off. Not just pale, younger. When he picked up his phone, there was no signal, no service, no photos, just a wallpaper of himself, smiling. But not the photo he remembered. He wasn't in control of anything anymore. He broke into the school after dark. The hallway smelled of lemon cleaner and dust. Linoleum floor like polished bone. Classroom doors were all locked except the principal's office. Inside it had changed. The trophies were gone. So were the file cabinets. Now, sterile lighting, a whirring refrigeration unit, and walls lined with photographs. A yearbook gallery, but wrong. Faces stretched across decades. The same students every year, unchanged. There was April in 1998, and in 2005, 2015, 2024, same dragon necklace, same lazy smirk, and then Nate, not as he was now, as he had been, 17, smiling, wearing a shirt he didn't remember owning. Underneath, Evan Trask, class of 1998. He stumbled back, hit a shelf. An old yearbook tumbled to the floor, fluttering open to a candid photo of him, Evan, laughing with Caleb, arm draped over Jennifer Ngo's shoulder. That had never happened. The lights buzzed. Something behind him breathed. "You weren't supposed to come back," Caleb said. He stood in the doorway, eyes hollow as photographs. "You were released." "I'm not Evan," Nate said, but his voice cracked like it used to in high school, higher, younger. They always forget at first. Caleb stepped forward. Behind him, April and Jennifer flanked the hall like shadows peeling off the wall. "This isn't real." "Oh, it's real," Jennifer whispered. "But it doesn't change. That's the beauty." "You can't trap people here." Caleb smiled. "You were never people. You were an outcome." Nate ran. He made it to the parking lot. The sky above Linwood was flat and violet like dusk frozen in oil. His car wasn't there. Or it was, but not his anymore. It was cherry red. No rust. Cassette tape stuck halfway in the deck. Inside, the air smelled like lemon heads and summer sweat, just like it had in 1998. 1 year later, Linwood Academy distributed its yearbook as usual, page 112. Third row down, center photo, Evan Trask, smiling, fresh-faced, wearing a tulle t-shirt and a necklace he couldn't name. He looked happy. He looked permanent. He looked home. The end. Damien liked the way the library smelled when it rained. Old paper, damp concrete, and something faintly metallic. He said it reminded him of his grandmother's attic, but in truth, he wasn't sure he'd ever been in one. Some memories blurred that way, especially lately. It was Thursday, just after 6 p.m., and the campus had gone quiet. He wandered into the lower levels of the humanities building with a tote bag, headphones around his neck, and a camera slung across his back. His documentary class had him filming spaces of quiet thought. The library, he figured, was perfect. He'd been to this wing before, the south annex always dim, a little colder than the rest of the building. The main lights were off, but the push lamps along the floor hummed low, lighting the way like breadcrumbs. The restricted section was here, behind a dented steel gate that hadn't latched properly in years. Most students didn't even realize it opened. Inside, he found it by accident. No label, no barcode. A small black book, spine cracked and cover smudged. He flipped it open, a sentence on the first page, typed, not handwritten. He found this book on a day he shouldn't have. Damien smiled. Probably someone's art project. He kept reading. The entries were strange. Each page held a single line, like a journal stripped to its bones. She walked backward into the river with her eyes open. He forgot the sound of his daughter's voice and never noticed. They buried the alarm clock instead of the body. Damien read page after page, feeling the words settle inside him like fog. There were no names, just moments. Disjointed, personal, terrifying in their simplicity. He checked the spine again. Still no title, no library stamp. A few of the pages were dog-eared, like someone had marked their favorite horrors. When he left the annex that night, it was raining hard. The book was in his bag, tucked under his laptop. He didn't remember deciding to take it. Back in his apartment, he tried to email a clip from his library footage to his professor. The login failed. He tried resetting the password. Account does not exist. Weird. On campus the next morning, Damien walked past the psychology building and paused. The name on the glass, Halston Hall, wasn't right. He swore it used to be Garver Hall. He remembered it clearly, the old plaques, the blue banner on the front steps, but no one else seemed confused, not even Professor Halston, who, according to everyone, had always taught behavioral cinematics. That afternoon, Damien opened the book again. Near the back, a fresh entry. He noticed the world shifting around him, but it was too late. He looked around the library, half expecting to see someone watching. No one. Just rows of silent shelves and a distant ticking sound he couldn't place. Damien stayed up most nights now. The book sat by his bed, pulsing in his thoughts like a buried alarm. He told himself he was researching it, documenting something weird for a short film. But each time he opened it, he felt a little more hollowed out. Street names changed, his phone contacts began disappearing, whole names gone, numbers reduced to unknown. His roommate, Jared, who always made terrible eggs and played synth pop at 2 a.m., hadn't come home in days. No one remembered Jared. His bed was gone, his toothbrush gone. Even the apartment door now had a different number. He found himself staring too long into mirrors, waiting for something in his reflection to move first. One night, he blinked and saw himself still watching, expressionless. Then came the entry. He finds the body behind the language building, and it is smiling. The date on the page was tomorrow. Damien didn't plan to go, but his feet carried him there the next evening, like a puppet tugged by invisible strings. Behind the language building, near the generators, was a patch of overgrown ivy in a shape that didn't belong. It was a man, face frozen mid-laugh, eyes open. Damien staggered back. The body was real, but when he called campus security, they said no one was there. And when he returned 5 minutes later, it was gone. Damien stopped sleeping. He sat for hours in the library basement, surrounded by dusty shelves and the dim buzz of lights that seemed older than the building itself. He couldn't stop reading. The book had grown heavier in his hands. He could feel it changing. Pages warping, sentences rearranging when he wasn't looking. He found an entry with his name. Damien Calder forgets who he was and becomes what he read. Except, Calder wasn't his last name. Not until last week. His student ID had changed. Even the registrar confirmed it. You must be mistaken. In desperation, Damien began digging. Old university records, unarchived blueprints. He discovered the truth in a hidden box in the admin building's storage. Decades ago, the library had been used by an experimental intelligence division. Classified work in predictive consciousness and entropic narrative theory. The book wasn't a journal. It was a seed. Each reader who finished it planted themselves into its story, reality rewriting itself in ink. He flipped to the final entry. He writes the last sentence himself, not realizing that doing so erases him from history. Damien blinked, heart pounding. The page was blank. A pen lay beside him, uncapped. He didn't remember picking it up. Damien stared at the blank page. He should have walked away, closed the book, burned it maybe. But his hand moved on its own, like tracing over muscle memory he didn't remember learning. The pen touched the paper. He wrote, "I never should have read the library book." The ink shimmered for a moment, then sank as if the page absorbed it like water. A breeze moved through the stacks. The light overhead flickered. Somewhere, a door creaked open, and Damien was gone. No file, no ID, no room in the registrar's system, no camera footage. His professors paused when asked. Damien? I don't think we ever had a Damien. In the south annex of the library, the book sits quietly. The final page again is blank, waiting. The end. He watched his hands move across the piano keys, but the music was hollow, notes arranged in a memory that didn't feel like his. When he missed a note, the wrong part of him flinched. Theo Kress had been in a coma for 3 days. At least that's what the nurse said. Just bruising, no fractures. You're very lucky. She smiled too tightly. His chart said no surgery, but when he changed his hospital gown, he saw the scar, long, fresh, red, running like a zipper down his spine. Why would they cut my back open for a head injury? He asked. No one answered. Not the nurse. Not the doctor. Not his brother Sam, who just blinked and said, "You've always been intense, but now it's like, you're not you." The second day he asked for a mirror. His face looked fine, the way he remembered, but it didn't feel right. His cheek twitched when he frowned. The skin around his eyes sagged unfamiliar. He checked in with the front desk. Theo Kress, he said. The receptionist's fingers paused mid-keystroke. You're not in the system. He tried again with his insurance card. She frowned. That's odd. Your prints don't match. Back in his room, he sat still. His fingers trembled when he pressed them together. A pianist's fingers. He had the strength, the calluses, but when he played Appassionata from memory, it sounded hollow, like a ghost playing a song it once knew. Theo waited until night, then slipped out. He walked the perimeter of the hospital parking lot, pretending to look for a lighter, anything. Then he ducked into the ER loading bay. 2 ambulances had come the night of his accident, but only one body was logged in the patient database. The second van never existed, officially. He found a terminal, security footage, no password. They weren't hiding it very well, or maybe they thought he wouldn't look. He watched the tape, saw himself pulled from the wreck. Then another gurney, another figure, covered, rushed inside. Timestamp 3:48 a.m. Logged patients 1. He froze the footage, bright white lights, 2 men, 1 body bag. He zoomed in. The face was obscured. He clicked through the logs. 1 entry had been deleted, not erased, deleted. He recovered it. Incoming, experimental, neural integrity project, subject transfer of 5, critical. His name wasn't there, but he saw something else, synaptic continuity group. He Googled it, a biotech lab, attached to the hospital. Its founder, Dr. Evelyn Bast, had vanished a month ago, presumed dead. Her last published paper, Body Integrity and Mind Drift, Preserving Selfhood Through Neurological Transfer. His hands began to shake, not tremble, shake, like they weren't connected properly anymore. He visited the synaptic continuity group the next day, or what was left of it. The lab was cold, clean, dead. Computer screens still glowed faint blue. Desks had coffee cups and photos. But the heart of it, the core lab, was sealed. He picked the lock with the edge of a hospital meal tray. Inside, he found the machine. Metal, arched, like an MRI married a confession booth, cords everywhere. 1 long metal chair with sockets for the skull, and behind it, journals. Paper, not digital, scrawled by hand. Subject drift begins at day 7 post-transfer. Overlap increases if original source body is not terminated. Symptoms include memory dissonance, tremor, vocal divergence, involuntary empathy, competing thoughts, dual presence. Then, 1 body, 1 mind, always, or both dissolve. He laughed, a small, high sound. Then he saw the photo taped to the wall, a man. His face, a little thinner, paler, wearing his watch. The other Theo called him first. Said, you probably feel it now, don't you? Theo couldn't respond. I woke up in the drawer. They zipped me up like I was trash. But I remembered everything. You think you're the original? You're not. They didn't save you. They copied. They met the next night, an abandoned recital hall downtown. Both sat at the piano, side by side. Both played Appassionata, perfectly, identically. Their fingers moved in sync. You remember Mom's perfume? One asked. Roses and bleach, the other replied. You remember the fire? The other nodded. It started with the toaster. I was 5. They spoke for hours, same memories, same reactions. They finished each other's thoughts, then spoke the same line in unison. Then one said, I get migraines now. The other, I smell smoke sometimes when there's none. Both voices trembling, were splitting. The blending started 2 days later. Theo stood in his kitchen and found a knife in his hand. He didn't remember picking it up. He heard music in his ears when none was playing. Once, he woke up on the floor. The other Theo was there. Or maybe he was the one on the floor. One reached for the other, both in pain. You need to go back to the lab, he said. But what if we're both copies? Then one copy dies, so the other doesn't melt. They returned to the lab. The machine still worked. Lights flickered. A generator hummed in the basement. Theo strapped himself in. The other Theo stood by the switch. You don't have to. Yes, I do. The switch clicked. The hum rose. A scream tore out of one mouth, or maybe both. The lab lights blew. The scream stopped. Only one Theo stood up, but he wasn't sure which one he was anymore. He walked out slowly. Felt different, heavy, full of echo. He didn't go back to the hospital. He went home. Weeks passed. People stopped asking if he was feeling better. He played piano again, but only in private. Sometimes his fingers froze mid-chord. Sometimes he'd stare at the mirror too long. One night he saw the reflection blink after he did. Then came the note, in his jacket. If you're reading this, I didn't win. He stared at it for hours. He tried to play the piano. His fingers hovered above the keys, trembling. He couldn't remember if he was left-handed. He couldn't remember which version of himself had loved the music. The phone rang. The hospital asked for Mr. Kress. He didn't answer. The end. When Julie Lang found the photos, the attic air smelled like dry paper and spoiled vanilla. Her grandmother's cedar chest had been sealed with duct tape, a final measure of paranoia from a woman who once kept all the clocks in her home 5 minutes fast to stay ahead of death. Inside the chest, baby pictures, Julie's own. She smiled at the soft focus images, her swaddled in a crocheted blanket, gripping the ear of a stuffed rabbit, sitting beside a woman who might have been her mother or a young aunt, but then she saw him. A man in a gray suit, far in the background, behind the picket fence. Another photo, him again, just inside the doorway. Another, standing in the hallway mirror's reflection. His face was soft focused too, but his eyes looked directly into the lens. Always, as if he'd been posing. Julie stared for a long time before calling her mother. "Do you recognize this man?" she asked. "What man?" her mother said. "In the photos," Julie replied. "He's in the background of almost all of them." There was silence, then the soft click of her mother hanging up. When Julie called back, her father answered. He said her mom had gone to lie down. He didn't remember any man either. "And I don't think you had that many baby photos," he added. "We always said it was a shame." Julie turned the pictures over. Her grandmother had labeled them meticulously. Julie, 4 months, first smile. Julie, 10 months, Grandma's garden. Everyone had a date. Everyone included him. She scanned them, uploading the images to her laptop. They showed no signs of tampering, no artifacts, no double exposures, no shadows out of place. But the man was there, always. And now he was moving. In the digital versions, he wasn't static anymore. In one frame, his eyes were a fraction more open than in the print. In another, his head tilted slightly closer to Julie's crib. She stopped scanning after that. That night, she dreamed of her grandmother's voice. "Keep the lid shut. Don't let him out." The next day, Julie checked her birth records online. No results. Not at the county, not at the state, not even in the scanned church register where her baptism had been recorded. The photo labeled christening, July 1990, still had the man. Standing just behind the priest, Julie's middle name, Grace, had vanished from her parents' memories. "Did we ever give you one?" her father asked. "I thought we meant to." She stopped sleeping. Shadows began lingering too long. Mirrors glitched, reflections slow to sync with her movements. And in the security footage from her apartment hallway, a man in a gray suit waited outside her door. Not visible to the camera, only in the reflection of the brass doorknob. Desperate, Julie tracked down Edwin Mars, a retired photo developer from her grandmother's old neighborhood. She emailed him the scans. He called the next morning. "You shouldn't have found those," he said. "People used to bring in pictures like that, always families, always happy at first. Then came the accidents, the disappearances. I started keeping copies." "You kept photos of other people's kids?" "No," Edwin said. "I kept him. He shows up the same way in every case. Has since the late 70s, maybe longer." "What is he?" "A loop. An echo. I think he was embedded in old Kodak film stock, maybe during a processing defect, maybe something worse. The more people look, the more real he gets." Julie felt the floor drop beneath her. "So he's not alive?" "Not anymore," Edwin said. "He's presence, not person. Sight anchors him, and you've been anchoring him across decades." "I didn't mean to. You don't have to mean to. You just have to look." Julie went home and burned the prints, every last photo. But the man didn't vanish. He was still in her computer files, now replicated in the cloud. Unknowable, unkillable, omnipresent. He was behind her in her LinkedIn profile. He was in the background of her college graduation, behind the dean. He was reflected in the glass of a building she never remembered entering. The apartment grew colder. At night, the mirror in her hallway began showing her bedroom, her sleeping form, and him, standing at the edge of the bed. She called her mother again. Her mother said, "Who is this?" "Mom, it's Julie." "You must have the wrong number. I don't have a daughter." Julie didn't cry. There was no point. She turned off her lights and opened every mirror in the apartment. She took her final picture, herself standing in front of the largest one, facing the man. The flash went off. 2 weeks later, a young couple bought Julie's apartment. The landlord said it had been vacant for years. They found a single photo left behind, wedged in the radiator. A baby girl, smiling in a stroller. Behind her, standing very still, was a man in a gray suit. He was looking straight at the camera. The end. The first time Elliot saw the phrase, "the house behind your thoughts," it was buried in the analytics of a yoga mat website in Portland. He assumed it was a misfire, some bot-churned nonsense caught in the net of search engine randomness. But then he saw it again, then again. Different clients, different cities, always the same 6 words. Curiosity was his ruin. He typed it into his search bar with the detached professionalism of a guy who optimizes keywords for a living. The top result was an abandoned Zillow link. The second redirected to a forum full of empty threads. The third showed a real estate photo that almost looked like it moved when he scrolled. A Victorian house. Each time he refreshed, the curtains shifted, or a shadow leaned too long in the doorway. It wasn't animated, but something was wrong. That night, Elliot's smart speaker lit up at 3:12 a.m. "Coordinates found," it whispered. "Route prepared." His phone vibrated once. GPS coordinates blinked on the lock screen. Most people would have unplugged everything. Elliot wrote it off as a bug and drove there the next day. The house was real. It stood at the edge of an overgrown lot like something forgotten by time. A sickly gray Victorian stitched in moss and static. No driveway, no mailbox, just vines and windows blinking with flickering blue light. Inside, the air was warm, electric. Every wall was covered in glowing screens, some built into antique frames, others projected like wallpaper. They played snippets of browser history, but not his current history. These were searches he'd almost made, questions he'd hovered over before changing his mind, words he thought but never typed. How to disappear without being found. Does she still think about me? How to know if you're a bad person. One room had articles on childhood trauma. Another had footage of a Halloween he didn't remember being filmed. The worst was a room with only one screen. It showed a blank Google bar and a cursor blinking, waiting. Elliot backed out, fast, heart pounding. The hallway had changed. He didn't remember the chandelier or the red door. When he got back to his apartment, it was dusk, but the air smelled like the hallway, and the lights flickered twice when he stepped inside. He laughed it off, told himself it was stress, overwork, something explainable. He didn't sleep. Next morning, a tab had opened on its own. It was the Zillow page again, but now the house had his address. Even the photo looked more like his building. He shut the laptop. It reopened. He unplugged the modem. The page loaded anyway. Each day something else changed. The window by his desk grew taller. His bedroom light now flickered in the same pattern as the hallway lamp in the house. One night he came home to find a door in his apartment that hadn't been there. It led to a narrow room with no windows and a mirror that showed him typing at his desk in clothes he hadn't worn yet. Elliot tried to stop thinking about it. That made it worse. He covered mirrors, unplugged everything. But his phone still chimed every night at 3:12. Continue search? One morning he found his browser history wiped clean except for one entry. Welcome home, Elliot. His apartment had begun to shift, almost geometrically. He stepped into the kitchen and found himself in the bathroom. His closet became a hallway. The front door no longer led to the outside. It opened to the Victorian foyer. He stood in the doorway for hours, watching light shift through the curtains, each flicker in rhythm with his breathing. He walked in. Each room greeted him with a sound from his past. The beep of an old Nintendo console, the voicemail tone from his first cell phone, the clink of dishes in a kitchen that had burned down when he was 15, and always the screens. One showed him sitting in this very room 5 minutes ago. Another showed a future version, grayer, paler, sitting on the floor muttering, "I remember now. I remember everything." The final room had no furniture, just the screen and the search bar. This time, the phrase typed itself, "Where do you belong?" The cursor blinked. A second later, a new tab opened. It was an exact blueprint of his apartment with one difference. Every room was labeled with a feeling. The living room, doubt. The kitchen, resentment. The bathroom, shame. The hallway, denial. And the front door, acceptance. Elliot stared at the blueprint. The screen flickered, then it blinked off, and the lights went out. In the dark, the air changed, static heavy, electric. He heard the speaker behind him hiss. "Welcome home, Elliot," it said. He turned around. The room was gone. He stood in his apartment again, except now it was the house. The screens lined his walls. The furniture was covered in dust. The floorboards creaked like they remembered someone else walking here. He ran to the door, opened it. The Victorian hallway. His phone buzzed one final time. The screen said, "Last search. The house behind your thoughts." Underneath, a new phrase loaded. Final result, the end. Tasha Velasquez always locked the door twice. She'd twist the deadbolt with a firm click, then tug once on the handle, just to be sure. It was habit now, not paranoia. She'd tell herself that. Just like she told herself the wine bottle in the sink was from last night, even when she couldn't remember opening it. Or that the hallway light had burned out again, and she hadn't just noticed the dark creeping closer each day. Her apartment was on the 23rd floor, tucked high above the snarled, flashing veins of downtown Los Angeles. Big glass windows looked out over a city that never stopped pulsing, never stopped watching. But up here, it felt quiet. Still. Almost safe. She lived alone now. Divorce papers had been signed last spring. Julian had taken the espresso machine and the Le Creuset. She'd kept the plants, 3 of them, and the silence. In the morning, the apartment filled with golden light and the faint hum of traffic far below. It felt almost holy. Tasha liked routines. She left for work at 8:07 a.m. every morning. Keys in the dish, mug in the sink, shoes placed neatly by the door. Everything had its place, and everything stayed in place. Until it didn't. She didn't notice at first. The kinds of things that make you question your memory, not your reality. Her lipstick uncapped, a sweater folded the wrong way. Her favorite pen left out when she swore she'd packed it. Just little slips, mistakes anyone could make. Still, at night, she sometimes stared into the dark mirror above her dresser and waited for her reflection to blink first. Tasha was unlocking her door one Thursday evening when the neighbor leaned out, her arms crossed and eyebrows drawn tight. "You guys patch things up or something?" she asked. Tasha blinked. "Sorry? Last night? All the shouting?" The woman scoffed. "Didn't know you were back together. Sounded ugly." Tasha forced a smile. "I was working late. I wasn't here." But the neighbor just stared at her, like that made it worse. The next morning, a voicemail from building security. "We reviewed the noise complaints. Footage shows you entering your unit at 9:14 p.m. and leaving again at 11:42. Just making sure everything's okay." Tasha had been downtown until midnight. She'd checked her Uber receipts twice. There was no way. She thought about it all day. The footage, the neighbor, the sound of shouting she never heard. When she got home, she noticed the smell first. Old wine. Her favorite glass was in the sink, empty. Smudged with lipstick she hadn't worn in weeks. Her keys were in the wrong dish. Her bathroom towel was damp, and her toothbrush had moved half an inch. She stood still in the middle of her apartment, arms limp at her sides. The air felt stale. Watched. Behind her, the hallway mirror reflected the same quiet room. But the reflection blinked a second too late. Tasha stopped using the mirrors. She covered the one in the hallway with a towel first. Then the one above the sink. Last was her bedroom mirror, the tall one she used to admire herself in, back when she felt like someone else. She caught it watching her sometimes. Her reflection paused while she moved, or mouthing words her own lips hadn't formed. Once, just before bed, she'd stood there and mouthed, "Who are you?" The reflection didn't move at all. She stopped sleeping. Her eyes twitched from the glow of the hallway light she now left on every night. Her job suffered. She missed meetings, forgot passwords. She couldn't remember when she'd last called her sister. One afternoon, she went to the management office to ask, casually, if any other tenants had mentioned strange experiences. The man behind the desk looked uncomfortable. "This has happened here before," he muttered, then blinked hard, "but I can't say more." Later that night, she hacked into the building's old online archives, years of digital leases poorly encrypted. She searched for her own name. Velasquez, Tasha, Unit 2307. Lease start July 2013. Lease end unknown. Status missing person 2014 renovation period. She stared at the screen until her eyes burned. She looked up slowly. Her laptop screen reflected faintly in the darkened window. In it, her face looked calm. Still, but she wasn't smiling. She stayed up all night watching the mirror. The towel was gone now. She had ripped it down around 2 a.m., shaking, sweating, needing to see. The mirror was silent, its surface dark, like water before a storm. She whispered, "Why me?" The reflection answered. Her double moved slowly, lifting a hand not in sync. Her eyes looked more awake than Tasha had felt in days. She mouthed words, silent, smooth, certain. "You leave, I stay." Tasha staggered back. "This isn't real," she said aloud, though no one was there to lie to her but herself. The lights flickered. Then she heard it. Footsteps from the hallway, her own voice, arguing. A crash, glass shattering, a sob, not from her throat but from the one she was watching. And she understood. The apartment wasn't haunted, it was recording. Loops of herself, every doubt, every fight, every bad choice, all replayed. A machine built to mimic behavior, to perfect it. But one loop hadn't ended. That loop had learned. Her doppelganger smiled, slow and bright, then stepped forward. Tasha stumbled away from the mirror as her reflection stayed behind, tilting its head. Only it wasn't in the glass anymore. It was in the room. Section 5. Resolution and Open Ending. The next morning, Tasha's apartment was quiet. No broken glass, no shouting. No one at the front desk mentioned anything strange. She stood at the window, coffee in hand, staring out over the waking city. A new stillness clung to her movements, controlled, deliberate. She poured her coffee without spilling a drop. She pressed her lips together and smiled faintly at her reflection. The woman in the glass smiled back, perfectly timed. At work, she was early. Her files were organized. Her voice didn't shake. That night, she folded her clothes precisely and placed her keys in the left dish, not the right. She left the hallway light off, and when she brushed her teeth, the mirror never blinked late again. Somewhere in a sealed folder buried under renovation permits, a digital note flickered. Subject transfer complete. 2307 loop, active. In the mirror, a different Tasha pressed her hand against the glass. And this one didn't smile. The end. The hallway light buzzed like it knew I didn't belong there. Burnt yellow, dim. I walked it alone every morning, the only one without security cameras. On Tuesday, a manila folder waited on my desk. No signature, no request log, just a number, 0234V and my name in red. Inside, fingerprints, photos, transcript. The subject, Andre Vess. Reported missing in Tucson. Reported name landed like a knife. Andre was my best friend, dead since 97. Car accident. I saw the wreckage. I saw the casket. Closed. I remember touching it. But the file said he disappeared. There were phone records from 2007, surveillance footage from 2011, even a confession from someone named Nolan Wren. I searched every system. No ID, no residence, no birth record. Like the man had been invented. I asked Carla in records. She didn't blink. Just said, "Wrong department. Cross-jurisdictional. You weren't meant to get that one." Then she locked the drawer before I could peek inside. The office grew colder each day. People I'd known for years avoided my eyes. I passed coworkers whispering, pausing mid-sentence as I walked by. One morning, my workstation had been moved to subfloor B, no reason given. I called my mother. "Do you remember Andre Vess?" I asked. "Of course," she said. "You two used to ride bikes all summer. He ran off, didn't he, after his dad vanished?" "No," I whispered. "He died. You came to the funeral." She hesitated. "Keon, I think you're confusing." Click, dial tone. I opened the file again. The contents had changed. New photos, new dates. Now Andre had braces. He never did. His mother had signed a police statement in 2006. I remember her face at the grave, gray and still. But here she smiled, dated 10 years after he was supposed to die. The file wasn't a record. It was a rewriting. That night, I dreamed of Andre screaming in a car, pounding on the glass. Except it was me outside, watching. I woke up sweating, breath ragged. There were handprints on the inside of my bedroom window. I started pulling older case files. Every analyst who'd ever been assigned one like mine. Same pattern. Traumatic link. Implausible details. All accidentally reassigned. And all gone. Diana Glenn, last seen 2018, left behind a notebook tucked behind the break room fridge. They're not cold cases, they're constructs. Behavioral integrity tests. You're the lab rat. I looked up my own file access history. C023948V wasn't requested, it was assigned. Directly from Division 5B, a division that doesn't officially exist. Its cases are designed to mimic trauma, to test how far a mind can warp truth to fit a fabricated puzzle. It wasn't about solving anything. It was about watching me lie to myself. And the more detailed my conclusion, the more the false narrative became real. I started forgetting things. My badge said Keon Vess one day. The next, it was Ross. My own handwriting changed in my notes. I found a printed report I didn't remember writing, signed with my initials. It claimed Andre left home voluntarily, that I'd over-processed grief, that I was projecting. The lights in my apartment flickered when I touched the file. Static buzzed in my teeth. I heard whispers under running water. Someone said my name while I brushed my teeth. My reflection would hold its smile a half second longer than I did. Then the file updated again. Subject, Keon Ross. Status, missing. Date, April 28, 2025. Cause of death, compromised perceptual identity. That was next week. I went to the director. His office was unusually warm. He didn't look surprised when I handed over the file. You figured it out, he said. Not many do. Why me? He smiled. Because you're damaged, and they wanted to see how long it'd take before the wound reopened. I stood in silence. You want this to stop? He asked. File the report, close the case, we'll scrub the edits. You'll wake up with new memories, new role, new life. And if I don't, you disappear. I went home, tried to write the report. The words rearranged themselves, typed pages deleted mid-keystroke. I opened the fridge. Inside was a single sheet of paper. My obituary, beloved analyst, loyal servant, gone too soon. The next day, a new analyst walked in, Marla Dente. I recognized the look, haunted. Her file sat unopened on her desk. Subject, Marla Dente. Trauma trigger, missing twin. I walked past her, didn't speak. The receptionist didn't recognize me. No one did. I walked until my feet blistered. At a diner off 8th, the waitress poured coffee, frowning. You okay, mister? You look like you've seen a ghost. I stared at the coffee. Sorry, I said, wrong crime. The end. Lydia didn't believe in miracles, especially not the kind that came in white envelopes with prepaid return labels and pastel logos. But when the letter arrived, sleek, impersonal, inevitable, she opened it with hands that trembled like a child's. True Roots Ancestry has located your biological parents. They wish to meet. She laughed out loud. Then she cried for almost an hour. They met her in a white house that felt like a showroom. Her mother was neat to the point of emptiness, her expression unreadable. Her father wore a turtleneck and smiled too long. You're taller than we expected, he said. Do you sleep hot or cold? Her mother asked. She blinked. What? Temperature sensitivity can indicate instability. Lydia chuckled awkwardly. Well, I guess I'm unstable then. No one else laughed. That night, Lydia woke on the living room floor. Her ears rang, her nose bled. Her head screamed with surgical light. A scalpel hovered. A voice said, Subject 12 has exceeded predictive aging curve. She threw up in the sink. Her first call was to Jessa, the only foster sibling she still talked to. Disconnected. Second was Mark. It rang 5 times. He answered with a whisper. You shouldn't have looked, Lydia. What? What the hell is happening? A long pause. You were never meant to be older than 12. The line went dead. Lydia's reflection began to slip. In the morning, she stared into the mirror and saw a 12-year-old blink back, then 8, then nothing. The migraines worsened, flashbacks like gunshots, bright light, surgical tools, wires threading into bone. Her face, her actual, now grown-up face, started to feel fake, like makeup over someone else's skin. She visited her old foster home, or what was left of it. The building was gutted, abandoned, a shell. But in the half-collapsed attic, beneath a pile of scorched boxes, she found her file. No birth date, just a barcode. Under name, it read T12LV.NG. Subject issued to Haven Initiative. Return if expired. Her mailbox spat out another envelope. Inside, a hospital gown, folded with surgical precision. A note, pre-op begins at midnight. Fasting mandatory, no stimulants. Welcome home, Subject 12. She returned to the house. They greeted her like an overdue package. "We're so glad you came back," her mother said, placing a cold hand on her arm. "You don't understand," Lydia said, voice shaking. "I'm not yours." Her father nodded. "Of course you are. You're ours because we made you." He pressed something to her neck, a sting. She staggered, but something inside her didn't shut down. Something rejected the sedative, rejected the protocol. Lydia lurched forward. Her hands found a tray of silver tools. She flung them. A scalpel slashed the man's cheek. He stumbled, clutching his face, not bleeding, just leaking clear fluid. Her mother screamed, not with fear, but frustration. "She's rebooting. Stop her." She kicked the table over, ran. The walls melted behind her, screaming with electric voices. "Subject breach, emergency override, subject breach." She kept running. She drove for hours. The sky was gray and bleeding. Her pulse was a war drum. Her skin buzzed with static. The mirror on her dashboard flickered. Her face shifted. 13, 26, 8, newborn, flickering like a broken slide projector. She pulled over and stared at herself. Her face blurred, then settled. Hers again, for now. Then came the voice, her voice but wrong. "Prototype breach, emergency override, shutdown incomplete." Lydia laughed, then she cried. Then she stopped the car, and then she stopped aging. The end. The lease was cheap, the neighborhood loud, and Jaden hadn't asked why the floors above were still dark. The property manager, a bald man with fingernails too clean for his work boots, had smiled when he handed over the keys. "You'll be the first. Everything else is under renovation. Should be quiet." It wasn't. Not at night. The first time, Jaden thought it was a raccoon or a faulty pipe, some rhythmic creaking above his head around 2 a.m. But then came the dragging sounds. Furniture, followed by low, muffled voices like someone rehearsing a script underwater. Always the same cadence, always ending in a scream that started low and curdled into something broken. He sat up in bed, waited, listened, told himself he imagined it, but the next night it came again, same time, same sequence, same scream. He brought it up casually when the landlord dropped by to fix a leak. "Hey, I thought you said the upstairs was empty?" The man didn't blink. "It is." Jaden tried to laugh. "Well, unless you've got ghosts dragging furniture around." "Old buildings," the landlord said, tugging his coat tight. "They breathe weird." Jaden recorded the sound, placed his mic near the ceiling, set the gain high. He posted the clip online, but when he checked the upload, it was just white noise. No footsteps, no voices, just static, like the sound itself refused to travel. At night, it returned, exactly 2:14 a.m., always in the same sequence. He told himself to leave, but it was cheap and money was tighter than hope. And besides, he wasn't crazy. He'd been crazy before. There was a difference. He stopped trusting his headphones, started reading the lease. There in the fine print, a clause about proprietary surveillance protocols, privacy waivers for tenant well-being, something about acoustic conditioning. None of it made sense. He visited the local library, looked up the building's history, found a grainy article from 1986. Controversial compliance center closes amid abuse allegations. The address matched. The photos showed barred windows and yellow-tinted lighting, the same narrow hall he walked through daily. Back then it had been a halfway house for difficult patients, behavioral tests, audio triggers, isolation. He tried to forget. But at 2:14, the noises returned, the dragging, the voice mumbling in a circular chant. And then the scream, always that same scream, as if recorded and played back at just the right volume to fray the mind. Jaden started muting his devices. He unplugged the router, tried to sleep in the tub. That's when the knocking started. 3 sharp raps, right above his ceiling, just once each night, like punctuation. He posted again, this time using a different platform. He tagged the audio with spectrogram filters. It posted fine, but within minutes, the file disappeared. His account was flagged for inauthentic engagement. He didn't know what that meant. He didn't try again. On the 4th night, a neighbor caught him on the stoop. Pale woman, trembling hands. "You're in 1B?" she asked. He nodded. She didn't blink. "You're not supposed to hear the floor above." "Yeah," he muttered. "I figured." She leaned in, her voice shaking. "They used to test people. Sound deprivation, white noise conditioning. Now they test for resilience. How long before you react or break?" Jaden opened his mouth, but she was already walking away. The next night, he climbed the stairs. The second-floor hallway was cold and clean. No lights, no sound. The doors were painted shut. The floor felt soft, like rubber beneath the carpet. He knocked anyway. Nothing. When he returned to his unit, a draft brushed his ear. Not from the door, from the ceiling vent. He pried it off, shined his phone flashlight inside. There was no insulation, just wire mesh and a metal grid, crisscrossed with tiny speakers. His mic was still set to record. He let it run all night. At dawn, he listened. The sounds were there, perfectly intact. Footsteps, dragging, the chant. But this time the scream was his own. He hadn't screamed, had he? He checked older recordings. Reversed them, slowed them. Each scream was the same, exactly. It wasn't someone suffering. It was someone performing. A loop. He played it again. This time the voice whispered his name. Jaden smashed his mic, tore the vent out, ripped down the drywall until his fingers bled. Behind it was no floor, no upstairs, just endless insulation and speaker wire. The ceiling was a projection, a soundstage built in reverse. The floor above was never real. It was a conditioning loop. A test chamber. He wasn't living above anything. He was the upstairs. The final night, he sat under the vent and waited. At 2:14, the dragging began. But it was different this time. A child's voice whispered, "Who's down there?" Jaden froze. "Can you hear me?" it said. "Yes," Jaden whispered, trembling. "I hear you." A pause. Then the child's voice screamed. And through the vent, Jaden heard something move, above him. When the maintenance team arrived the next morning, the unit was spotless. No tenant, no sound. That night, a new resident moved in. At 2:14, he heard footsteps, dragging, a chant, then a scream. Jaden screamed. And somewhere in the dark, a small voice whispered, "You're not supposed to hear the floor above." The end. Armand liked clean lines. His apartment was mostly white and gray, the kind of space that looked untouched even when lived in. Every wire on his desk was tied down. His toothbrush stood exactly upright in a holder with no water stains. He called it UX symmetry. A joke, maybe, but not really. Every morning at 8 a.m., the camera light on his laptop blinked to life as he logged into the facial recognition software his team was testing. His job was to study how people moved through screens, how they clicked, paused, frowned. He was good at it. Observant, good with patterns. This Tuesday was like all the others, until it wasn't. He noticed it after lunch, a half-second delay. His eyes blinked, and on the screen his reflection blinked again, just barely out of sync. He stared, blamed the lag, restarted the software. It went away. But that night, brushing his teeth in the bathroom mirror, he paused. His reflection didn't, just for a second, like a glitch. Then it caught up. He wiped the mirror with his sleeve, suddenly cold. He didn't sleep well. By the end of the week, Armand had told himself 3 different explanations. Network lag, faulty software, poor sleep. All of them made sense. None of them helped. During a video meeting, he noticed his own thumbnail box, himself, arms crossed, but he wasn't crossing his arms. He leaned closer. The motion was delayed, reversed, then realigned. When the call ended, he stared at the frozen thumbnail image left behind. It was still looking at him. He updated the drivers, recalibrated the camera, ran diagnostics. Nothing changed. The bathroom mirror was worse. Once, while shaving, he nicked his jaw and flinched. His reflection didn't. It kept smiling, just a faint lift at the corners like it was amused by the mistake. He covered the mirror with an old towel. He stopped looking directly at the webcam. But the reflections followed him. In the elevator, in the chrome of a microwave door, in the dark gloss of his unplugged tablet, each time he noticed a pause. A blink that didn't match. A head tilt that happened before his own. He stopped trusting himself to speak aloud. What if it was listening? At night, when the world went quiet and flat, he sat in bed and stared at his black laptop screen. His face stared back, waiting. One night, it smiled again. This time, before he did. Armand stopped using mirrors entirely. He covered them with cloth, turned them to face the wall. Still, he saw it, in windows at night, in puddles after rain. His own face, repeating gestures he hadn't made yet. He set up a camera, left it on while he slept, just to prove nothing strange was happening. The footage played back in silence. He was asleep. But the reflection wasn't. On the laptop screen, in the dead glow of standby light, his image sat upright, watching him, breathing in time. But the eyes didn't blink. The next morning, he called in sick and stayed in bed. Curtains drawn, laptop closed. By afternoon, he couldn't take it. He scoured the internet, conspiracy forums, obscure research archives. Most of it was noise. But then he found it, a redacted government PDF from 1976, titled Behavioral Mirror Synchronization and Decay, Phase-Shifted Replicants. A note in the margin, they don't reflect light, they reflect behavior. And eventually, they stop reflecting. He slammed the laptop shut. In the dark screen, his reflection didn't move, not even when he did. The lights flickered just before midnight. Armin had removed every reflective surface he could. No screens, no windows. He slept on the floor now, in a corner of the living room, surrounded by blankets like they might shield him. But something had changed. He felt it first. A pressure in the air, like standing in an elevator that never stopped moving. Then he saw it. Across the room, his blacked-out TV was glowing, faint like moonlight underwater. Slowly, carefully, he turned his head. And there it was, his reflection, standing. Not sitting, not copying. Just standing, tilted slightly, hands at its sides, staring with a face he no longer recognized. It smiled first. It raised its hand first. It stepped forward into the screen. Armin couldn't move. Not because he was frozen, but because he didn't know what to do. How do you fight something that knows you better than you know yourself? The reflection leaned closer, still grinning. And then, as if in rehearsal, it opened its mouth and whispered something. Armin couldn't hear it, but he saw the lips move. I've been practicing. Armin woke up on the floor. The blankets were neatly folded beside him. The TV was off. He walked to the bathroom without thinking, flicked on the light. The mirror was uncovered, and there he was, smiling, calm, perfectly in sync. He raised his hand, so did the reflection, blinked, smiled again. Everything was normal. Too normal. That night he logged into work, joined a video call, talked about user experience and interface behavior. Everyone nodded along. No one noticed the way he didn't blink once. The end. The signal cut off when she crossed the line. It wasn't dramatic. No sparks, no bang, just gone. Her phone screen froze mid-scroll, buffering wheels spinning like a tiny hypnotist's watch. Nura raised her arm, took one step back, and the signal returned. Step forward. Dead. She blinked at the blank screen. Weird. She was unpacking the last of her boxes. The loft was too big for one person, exposed brick and metal beams, pretending to be artsy rather than industrial leftovers. It had character, and a corner that killed the internet. Maybe I need a second router, she muttered. She didn't fix it. Didn't really care. The dead zone was just that, a patch of no signal, no Bluetooth, not even static on the radio. A silent little space, like an electronic timeout corner, until the light started flickering, just there when she passed by. One overhead bulb would dim, slow and pulsing like it was breathing. The hallway socket hissed once, popping out her charger cable without a touch. Then came the whispers. She was tuning an old radio one night, static surfing, half nostalgic, half stoned, when she stopped on a blank frequency. In the fuzz, faint and wrong, a voice said something in a language that wasn't a language. Her name might have been in it, or not. She turned the dial. Static again. It wasn't sleep paralysis the next night. She felt awake. Her body felt heavy. Something scraped across the wood floor beyond her bedroom door. Her devices lit up, phone, laptop, smart bulb, flashing white once and going dark. Her phone pinged. New device detected. Unknown MAC address, 00 hidden 0. She stared at it for 5 full minutes, then took a screenshot. The next morning, the image was gone. Not deleted, just corrupted. A black square. She called Amira, her only real friend left in the city. Amira had built her own PC at 13 and once hacked their high school's attendance server to schedule her own early dismissal. She could trace anything. This MAC address doesn't exist, Amira said. Not just unregistered. It's not possible. Too many zeros. It's in the corner, Nora whispered, pacing around the edge of the dead zone. It doesn't want to be online. Say that again? Nora held her phone up, live camera on, screen flickering. It's feeding off my stuff. Then came the scream, not hers. The call cut out mid-breath, not even a goodbye. Just a loud, garbled shriek like wires tearing through flesh, and then silence. She called back, straight to voicemail. When she played the message hours later, it was scrambled. A voice said something slow and backwards, on loop. Don't let it sink. The next morning, her smart mirror glitched. Reflections flickered, her face there, then not, eyes blacked out in each pass. Her shadow stretched longer behind her than it should, moved when she didn't. The loft felt different. She knew it wasn't just paranoia. The dead zone wasn't dead. She took the subway to the library, offline, analog, safe. She dug into the building's records. Before condos, it was federal. Before that, classified. NSA used the site for non-visible adaptive field research, whatever that meant. One memo survived, barely legible. A scan, half redacted, but 4 words were clear. Human cloaking field trials. Subject never exited. Noura didn't sleep that night. She wrapped her phone in foil, turned off the breaker, sat in the dark with a baseball bat. Something knocked once from inside the dead zone. She didn't answer. When the power came back, all her devices had reactivated. Bluetooth back on, Wi-Fi syncing. Her photo app now included a new album, Live Captures. It was filled with blurred shots of her sleeping, of her back, of her standing at the mirror with no reflection. She threw the phone across the room. The screen didn't break, it just blinked, then turned itself off. She moved her desk in front of the zone, tried to block it. The next morning, the desk was pushed aside neatly. Her plants near it had wilted overnight. The shape of the zone changed, grew. One night, the shadow left her. She stood in the hallway, fluorescent light buzzing, and noticed it wasn't behind her. It had detached, still cast on the wall, still moving. She stepped forward, it stayed. She ran. Her voice assistant greeted her when she came back. "Hello, Noura," it said in someone else's voice. Not robotic, not synthetic, human, slow, male. She ripped the plug out of the wall. It laughed, not sound, just that hissing chuckle in the static of her mind. She deleted everything, wiped her phone, factory reset the router, smashed the mirror. But then her name vanished. She called Amira's number. Number not in service. Checked Instagram, her account was gone. Not banned, not hacked, just never existed. She tried texting her mom, got no reply. Called her boss. "Noura," they said, "do we know each other?" She was disappearing. One night she stood barefoot in the center of the dead zone. The air felt thick like breathing syrup. Her ears rang. The walls around her buzzed, not loud, just the sensation of noise without sound. And then her own voice spoke. "You're home now." It wasn't her mouth, but it was her voice. She ran to the bathroom. The mirror was just a wall now, a blank wall. She lifted her hands. No reflection, no shadow behind her, only the faint hum of the devices syncing. The last notification she received was a network request. 000 has accepted your identity. And then, Noura was offline. The end. The first envelope arrived on a Monday. No return address. Just my name in wide, clumsy letters, like a child trying too hard to write straight. Inside, a drawing. Crayon on faded paper. 5 stick figures around a dinner table. One was circled in red. In the window behind them stood a taller figure, entirely shaded in crimson. A name scrawled at the bottom in crooked cursive. Joel, age 5. I stared at it for an hour. I was Joel, 39, accountant, moderate drinker. My mother died when I was 5. I had no memory of drawing this. And the figure in red. The second envelope came Wednesday, then another on Friday. A house with no doors, a tree hung with dolls, a hospital bed with someone crying next to it, all in that same unstable hand, all signed Joel, age 5. The postmarks were from towns I'd never visited, and each return address simply said, Mother. I asked my therapist if this could be some kind of repressed memory issue. She asked if I was dreaming about the drawings. I said no. I lied. I was. In one dream, I was walking through a house identical to the doorless one from the drawing. The walls were covered in old children's crayon art. Every drawing had a red figure standing just outside. Then I woke up to a knock. Delivery. A furniture set I hadn't ordered. I tried to refuse it, but the delivery men showed me the invoice, my name, my card, my signature, the couch, the rug, the chair. They were all in the background of the drawing that came 3 days earlier. My therapist urged me to take a trip. She thought time away would help. I chose the town from the most recent envelope, Milltown, PA. Just a name, a postmark, and the address on the back of the drawing. Room 7, Willow Oaks Institution. The building was condemned. Shattered glass, vines in the door frame, squatters' graffiti on the stone. But I found room 7. Files moldering in waterlogged cabinets. A list of children. One name repeated 3 times. Joel Ashford, Joel Lamb, Joel Withers. Each had the same birth date. The next envelope contained a drawing of a boy standing alone in a circle. Around him, smaller, blurred outlines of children, all holding hands, looking away. The postscript read, "We were supposed to be together." I asked my foster records office for information. Most of it was sealed, but one entry stood out. Subject transition post-cohort B integration. No complications reported. I went home, tried to forget. That night, I got another envelope. No drawing this time, just a map. A hand-sketched grid of a town I recognized too late. My childhood neighborhood, my foster home marked with an X. Beneath it in the slanting scrawl, where you were supposed to stay. I returned. The house had new owners, but they let me in after I showed them the drawing. I told them I'd grown up there. They offered tea. When I asked about the basement, they said it had been sealed off before they moved in. But there was a loose panel behind the boiler. I squeezed through and found a small, empty room. At its center, a child's mirror, ringed with names carved in glass. My names, all of them. The red crayon circled the center one, Joel Ashford. In the reflection, a figure stood behind me, red, hollow-eyed, tall, familiar. "I'm the one they left behind," he said. I turned. No one. But the air felt split. That night, I dreamed I was in the house with no doors. The red figure was there, but this time, I knew. He was me. Or what was left of me. The part left behind in whatever therapy or science or ritual had torn my mind apart and glued it back wrong. The next morning, the furniture was gone. My apartment rearranged itself while I slept. A blank sheet of paper lay on the coffee table. Next to it, a red crayon. Then came the final envelope. Inside, a drawing of a single room. No windows, no doors. A red circle around the walls, thick and tight. Written beneath, "You're the last to return." When I blinked, I was standing in the room. The same from the drawing. No exits. No light but for a dim ceiling bulb that hummed with a familiar frequency. And I wasn't alone. Shapes stirred. Versions of me. Joel Withers with the limp. Joel Lamb with the stutter. Joel Ashford with the scar. They all stared, smiled. The one in red stepped forward. The others whispered, "Welcome home." He handed me a drawing. Blank. Then he pressed a red crayon into my hand. The end. The cassette came in an envelope without a return address. Just final performance scrawled across the case in what looked like red ink, though it didn't smear when Vera licked her thumb and rubbed at it. That bothered her more than it should have. The melody, 5 notes, no more, was simple, almost childish, but each time she played it, it sounded louder. She measured the decibel levels. The numbers stayed the same. It was louder only in her head. 3 of her students reported nightmares within the week. The same dream, rows of people in theater seats, heads turned toward an empty stage. Their mouths were sewn shut, but still they hummed, lips straining, bleeding, a 5-note drone. Vera laughed it off at first, chalked it up to campus folklore. She even made a joke in class. "Be grateful it's not 12-tone serialism, then you'd really go mad." But her fingers started tapping the rhythm on her desk. Her lips started whistling it in the shower. She recorded herself sleeping one night, uneasy. There it was, whistling, soft and slow, matching the cassette. She tried to reverse engineer the tune. Each interval aligned with an obscure numerological scale used in Gregorian chant, one that hadn't been in use since the 1500s. That's when the rabbit hole opened. She found references to the Order of Resonance, a sect of Renaissance composers excommunicated for attempting to unseal the breath of God through harmonic sequence. One scroll mentioned a 6th note that was not sound, but absence. A silence so perfect it fractured perception. She wasn't sleeping much anymore. The dream spread. One student, Colin, stopped attending class. When campus security found him, he was sitting naked in a lecture hall, humming. No words, just those 5 notes. Blood crusted at the corners of his mouth where he'd ripped the threads out himself. Vera became afraid of sound. She unplugged everything in her house, TV, phone, fridge. But the song found ways in, whistled by strangers in elevators, buzzed faintly through a neighbor's cracked window. Even birds mimicked it. Her own breathing fell into its rhythm. In the audio lab, she ran a signal trace through streaming archives. The pattern was there, fragments spread across thousands of songs, just 2 or 3 notes at a time, stitched invisibly by algorithm. Listeners around the world were unknowingly participating in its reassembly. She contacted Dr. Rainford, a retired symbologist. He called back, whispering, "They knew the 6th note," he said, "but they never played it. That's why they were silenced. The silence itself is the ritual, and the ritual activates everything that listens." "Activate what?" "Everything that listens," he repeated, and hung up. The next day, she found his obituary in the Herald. Stroke, they said, died in his sleep. No signs of struggle. She started to hear the silence. That was the worst part. Between breaths, between heartbeats, there was something deeper than quiet, something watching from the other side of frequency, a presence behind the pause. Her own recordings turned against her. One ended not with her whistling, but with her listening. Sitting silently in the dark, and after the 5th note she whispered, "Don't let them finish the song." She had no memory of saying it. Vera decided to destroy the tape, burned it in the fireplace of her office, or tried to. The flames went blue, then green, then out. When she looked, the tape was untouched. Then the file appeared on her laptop. No sender, no source, just finalperformance.wave. She deleted it. It reappeared. She unplugged the router. It opened itself. She shut the laptop. That night, her ears bled. On Friday, she confronted the dean. Dr. Laird was already waiting, sitting in her office chair like he belonged there. "I heard it too," he said. "Years ago. I thought I'd buried it." He pressed play on her recorder. Her own voice sang the notes, soft, gentle. The 5th note wavered and then nothing. No sound, no breath, no hum of the campus lights, no buzz of electricity. Just a flatline absence, like time had taken a breath and forgotten to exhale. Then came the static. It wasn't loud, it was absolute. She staggered back, her vision blurred. Laird's face melted like wax, his mouth moved, but no words came out. Behind him the windows darkened. Not night dark, deep dark, like ink poured over the world. The song had ended, and so had the silence. That was the trigger. The 6th note wasn't sound, it was the pause between, a ritualized absence. The room began to ripple. Her bookshelves folded inward, syllables crawling off the pages like insects. Her skin itched where the sound had touched it. She could hear things waking up. Not gods, not demons, just listeners, those who had waited beneath the static. She stumbled into the hallway. The world was mute. Students passed her in silence, eyes unfocused, lips twitching. The tune hummed through every throat. Each part of the melody broken across bodies. A human orchestra, unaware. The tape hadn't summoned them. It had taught them the parts. She ran, out into the rain. Her breath steamed in rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Silence. Her voice joined it. Don't let them finish the song. But it was already too late. Somewhere behind her, the whistling started again. But it wasn't hers. The end. Tanya pressed the elevator button with a sigh. The numbers blinked slowly, like they too were tired of going up and down all day. She had just left her 3rd interview of the month, another long, fluorescent-lit room where people smiled too widely and asked questions that made her feel like she'd been peeled apart. This time it was at Neurodex, a firm known for its tech and tight-lipped secrecy. She wanted that job. She needed it. But when the email came a week later, it said, "Thank you for your interest. We've decided to move forward with other candidates." A chill settled in her chest, and she told herself it was just part of the process. Weeks passed. She picked up freelance work and kept applying. Life slipped into a quiet rhythm. Coffee in the morning, background noise of podcasts, her cat Nico curling up beside her laptop. Then one Wednesday, she visited Neurodex again. Not as a candidate, but as a consultant shadowing a friend on a client project. While waiting in the lobby, her eyes landed on the employee registry, looping on a screen by reception. Tania Reed. Her face, her name, her job title, Behavioral Systems Analyst. But she never got the job. Tania froze. Her name on the screen looped again, Tania Reed, Behavioral Systems Analyst. with a crisp ID photo where her hair was straighter, her smile tighter, like someone trying to copy her without knowing how she really smiled. She tugged her friend Kim, who squinted at the screen. "That's weird," Kim said. "Didn't you say you didn't get the job?" "I didn't," Tania whispered. "That's not me." Kim tilted her head. "Looks like you to me." Later that night, Tania searched the company's online staff directory. The name was there, the photo, the role, even an internal extension. She called it. A voice answered. "Neurodex, this is Tania." She hung up. The next day, she showed the page to her roommate, Deja. Deja blinked. "You're being dramatic. You've worked there for weeks." "What? No, I haven't." Deja frowned. "What about the welcome party? You made that weird joke about coffee and neural networks." Tania's stomach turned cold. That never happened. She'd never been invited. Confused and desperate, she dug through her photos. Nothing new. But when she checked her email, some old messages had replies. Replies she never wrote. A message to her mom read, "Loving the new job. It's challenging in all the best ways." She hadn't sent that. And when she walked past the mirror in the hallway, her reflection lingered just a moment too long. Its lips moved first. Tania stopped opening her emails. Every day more came through. Conference calls she didn't attend, files she'd never seen. Her name signed off messages in perfect tone, but she hadn't typed a word. She tried to print one out to show someone. The paper jammed. When it finally slid out, the email was blank, just white space and her name, faintly watermarked behind the margins. She stood before the bathroom mirror, staring. The woman in the glass wore heavier eyeliner. Her blouse had a logo, Neurodex. Tania looked down. Plain t-shirt, no logo. She reached out. Her reflection didn't. At night, her dreams curled into static in boardrooms. Fluorescent lights buzzed over versions of herself, clapping, laughing at things she hadn't said. She awoke with phrases in her mouth. Optimize interpersonal response patterns. What did that even mean? Her phone pinged with a notification. Don't forget tomorrow's team sync, 9 a.m. She hadn't added anything to her calendar. She opened her notes app to write things down, to hold on to something real. But the words scrambled even as she typed them. "I don't remember writing the..." The sentence ended in code. And when she looked at her fingers, they were holding a Neurodex badge. Tania marched into Neurodex. No appointment, no hesitation. She pushed past security, reached the elevator, and punched the button for floor 11, the research wing, the one sealed behind opaque glass. The doors slid open. The floor smelled like cold metal and citrus cleaner. Her steps echoed. At the end of the hall, a door pulsed with light. Inside, monitors bloomed with faces. Versions of her, laughing, working, leading. Each wore slightly different clothes. One had a mole that she didn't. Another's eyes were green. A woman stood there, clipboard in hand. She didn't look surprised. "You weren't supposed to notice," she said softly. "Who is she?" Tania's voice cracked. "She's you. The optimized version. We don't hire imperfect candidates. We simulate based on interviews. Personality scans, reactions. If they score high, we instantiate them." Tania's knees buckled. "But I'm real." "You were." The woman offered a kind smile. "The glitch is rare. Most originals forget. You didn't." Behind her, a screen flickered. A copy of Tania stood at a podium, speaking to a crowd. "You're overwriting me," Tania whispered. "Not overwriting," the woman said. "Refining." And somewhere behind her ribs, something began to feel hollow. Tania ran, out of the building, into the blur of city lights. Her breath fogged in the night air. She pulled out her phone. Contacts gone. Photos, replaced with corporate headshots. Her lock screen now bore the Neurodex logo. Her reflection in a shop window blinked differently. At home, Nico hissed and bolted under the couch. She whispered to the mirror to herself, "I'm still here." But the reflection smiled first this time. Weeks later, a new hire orientation video surfaced online, leaked by an intern. It showed an employee sharing onboarding tips. The name tag read, Tania Reed. She looked into the camera, confident, poised, polished. "We don't believe in mistakes here," she said. "Only better versions." In the background, for one split second, a face pressed against the glass, eyes wild, mouth open in a silent scream. The end. The first time Lucas heard the girl's voice, it wasn't in the dream. It was through the intercom, soft and distant, like someone whispering down a hospital corridor. "This isn't your sleep," she said. Then silence. His room at Somnatech smelled like disinfectant and old plastic. The bed creaked every time he moved. Somewhere behind the mirrored wall, technicians watched his REM cycles spike and fall. They told him the study was simple. Pair two sleeping minds using the neural sync headsets, observe the dream content, compare notes. Easy money, they said. He didn't ask about subject zero. No one did. At first, it felt like lucid dreaming. A train station soaked in orange light, clocks with melting hands. The girl stood near the platform edge, pale and barefoot, eyes too large for her face. "Are you real this time?" she asked. He laughed. "I think so." "You're not a lion?" "No, I'm Lucas." She frowned. "They always say that." Each night the dream returned. The girl, sometimes 6, sometimes 16, aged backward. Her voice grew clearer, her questions sharper. She began calling him by different names: Jonah, Elliot, Elian, never Lucas. Lucas kept notes, scribbled descriptions in a notebook beside the bed, but the pages began to rewrite themselves. Words faded, names changed. Once, his own handwriting accused him. "You're not real. Stop pretending." Outside the dream, things shifted. Mirrors no longer showed his face, just the room behind him, empty. He tried taking a photo, but the phone glitched, an overexposed blur where he should have been. A nurse in the hallway smiled and said, "Good morning, Elian. My name's Lucas." She blinked, confused. "Of course it is," she murmured and walked away too quickly. He checked his ID. It read, Elian Mercer. He didn't recognize the face. Lucas demanded answers. The lead researcher, Dr. Rausch, flipped through a clipboard and frowned. "There's no Lucas enrolled. You must be confused. Maybe too many cycles. Take the weekend off." He went home, but home wasn't his. The key worked, but the apartment layout was wrong. Furniture misplaced. Photographs in the hallway showed a man with his smile, but different eyes. In one, he was holding a child, a girl, pale, barefoot. She stared into the camera like she knew. The dreams intensified. Now they took place in a collapsing hospital, hallways endlessly folding back on themselves. The girl walked ahead, never touching the floor. Her voice echoed without movement. "You stayed too long," she said. "It's hard to leave once the dream accepts you." "I don't understand. You were only supposed to anchor me, not become me." He ran. Rooms shifted. The ceiling cracked. Alarms screamed somewhere distant. He woke gasping, soaked in sweat, but the room was different again. No mirror, no windows, just that damn intercom, crackling. "She's awake now," it whispered. Lucas broke into Somnatech. He bypassed the security door with a fire axe. Empty hallways, no guards, no alarms, just silence. He found the server room, found the files, hidden directories labeled const transfer, anchor persistence, Elian null. He read. The study had never been about dream synchronization. It was about cognitive displacement, a way to extract consciousness from vegetative patients and implant them into hosts via synchronized dreaming. The anchor, the donor, would dissolve naturally, forgotten, overwritten by the stronger mind. Subject 0, Eva Mercer, comatose for 7 years, severe brain trauma, no recovery expected. Target host, Elian Mercer, her twin brother, volunteer. Lucas dropped the files. His hands were shaking. His name was never Lucas. He had no name. He was a dream construct, built from leftover neural scaffolding. He stumbled into the observation chamber. The bed was empty, the headset still active, blinking red. A mirrored wall reflected nothing back. Then, motion. The girl, standing behind him, no longer a child, now a woman. She touched the glass. "You're still here?" He tried to speak but couldn't. She smiled. "Persistent, you always were." He reached toward her, but his hand passed through the mirror. There was no glass, no reflection, just cold. She turned and walked away. The door shut behind her, locked. He screamed until his voice broke. No one came. And each night after, the dream began again. Always the same platform, always the same light, always the same face, now older, walking away without turning back. One night, he caught a glimpse of her in the real world, or what he thought was real, reflected in a window. Wearing his skin, his voice, smiling at strangers who called her Lucas. She didn't look back. The end. And that's the end. But the night is far from over. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Tell me, are you still awake? Or did the whispers follow you into your dreams? If sleep won't come just yet, there are plenty more stories waiting for you. Go on, pick another. I'll be here.